from the desert edge of Egypt to the green silence of the Maya lowlands, from the dry river valleys of Peru to the royal cemeteries of Nubia, one shape keeps rising out of the ancient world. It appears where languages are unrelated, where gods have different names, where kings dress in different symbols, where the dead are imagined travelling toward different heavens. It is built from limestone, mud brick, packed earth, cut stone, rubble, plaster, clay, and human patience. Sometimes it stands as a tomb, sometimes it is not a tomb at all. Sometimes it carries a temple on its summit, sometimes it hides chambers deep inside. Sometimes it is aligned with stars, solstices, streets, mountains, rivers, or the invisible order a society believes holds the world together. Again and again, in places separated by oceans and centuries, people decide that power should have a broad base and a rising body, that sacred space should climb, that memory should be made heavy enough to resist time. Before we go deeper, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, if this is the kind of history and mystery you enjoy, because this story is not only about pyramids, it is about why human beings, looking at the same sky from different worlds, so often answer with the same silhouette. The tempting version of the mystery is simple. Someone imagines a lost teacher, a forgotten seafaring culture, an ancient secret carried from one continent to another, as if the pyramid were a clue left behind by a single, vanished master plan. That idea has a certain charm, because the human mind enjoys patterns, and the map of the world seems to offer a dramatic one. Egypt has pyramids, Mesoamerica has pyramids, Peru has great platform mounds, Nubia has steep royal pyramids, Mesopotamia has ziggurats, Asia has monumental tomb mounds and stepped sacred forms. The shape travels through the imagination almost too easily, but archaeology is often less interested in the easiest mystery than in the deeper one. The stronger question is not who taught everyone to build pyramids. The stronger question is why so many societies, without needing direct contact, found this form useful, beautiful, stable, terrifying, holy, and politically powerful. A pyramid is not a complicated idea at first glance. It begins with a truth any builder can feel in the hands. Heavy things need support. A wide base can carry more weight than a narrow one. A structure that narrows as it rises can climb higher without collapsing under itself. In a world without steel frames, concrete cores, cranes, or modern engines, this is not a small advantage. The pyramid is one of the simplest ways to turn mass into height. It lets earth or stone rise safely. It makes a mountain where there was no mountain. It creates a monument visible from fields, riverbanks, roads, plazas, and desert horizons. It can be built in stages, repaired in layers, enlarged by later rulers, resurfaced with plaster or stone, crowned with a shrine, sealed around a tomb, or used as the central marker of a planned city. Its geometry is practical before it is mysterious, and that may be the first key. Many different peoples did not need to inherit the same secret to discover the same advantage. Yet practicality alone cannot explain why pyramids feel so charged. A warehouse can be practical. A wall can be practical. A road can be practical. A pyramid does something else. It changes the emotional shape of the landscape. It makes hierarchy visible. It says that some places are higher than others, and some people are closer to the divine, the ancestors, or the cosmic order than others. It gathers labor from hundreds, thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of lives into one silent form. It takes surplus grain, quarrying skill, administrative control, religious belief, seasonal labor, astronomical attention, and the ambitions of rulers, then compresses them into stone, even when no voice survives from the workers themselves. What survives in the record suggests that pyramids were never only buildings. They were acts of organization. They were proof that a society could command time, food, bodies, materials, and imagination on a scale far beyond ordinary life. In Egypt, the pyramid becomes inseparable from kingship and death. It rises from the desert west of the Nile, where the sun descends and where the dead are placed near the edge of the living world. The pharaoh's tomb is not just a burial place. It is part of a system of temples, causeways, offerings, priests, rituals, boats, fields, and cosmic expectations. The pyramid may evoke the first mound of creation rising from the waters of chaos, or the rays of the sun made solid in stone, or the stairway by which a king's spirit ascends into the imperishable sky. Scholars still debate the full range of meanings held inside that form, because ancient symbols are rarely locked to one explanation. But the broad picture is clear enough in Old Kingdom Egypt. The pyramid is a machine of royal eternity, a monument built so that one human ruler can pass beyond ordinary human limits and remain woven into the order of the universe. In Mesopotamia, a similar outline leads to a different world. The ziggurat is not primarily a royal tomb. It is a raised sacred platform in a flat riverland, a mountain made by people who live far from natural mountains. Mud brick cities rise from the plains between the Tigris and Euphrates, where floods, canals, fields, and temple economies shape daily life. The ziggurat lifts a shrine above the city and makes the presence of the god visible from a distance. Its steps and terraces do not simply imitate Egypt. They answer another landscape, another theology, another kind of urban order. The same broad principle appears to approach the sacred, build upward, but the meaning is local. The pyramid-like form is not a universal sentence repeated word for word. It is more like a grammar that different civilizations use to say different things. Across Mesoamerica, the pyramid becomes a stage for public ritual and cosmic alignment. At Teotihuacan, vast structures organize an entire city, with broad avenues, plazas, and temples forming a planned sacred landscape. Among Maya cities, pyramids rise above forests, their stairways climbing toward temple rooms and roof combs, their positions sometimes linked with calendrical cycles and celestial events. In later Aztec Tenochtitlan, twin temples stand on a great platform at the center of imperial ritual life. These monuments do not behave like Egyptian royal pyramids, even when modern eyes place them in the same category. They are climbed, seen, renewed, rebuilt, and used. They are not silent geometric tombs alone. They are urban instruments, places where ceremony, authority, timekeeping, sacrifice, memory, and political theatre meet under the open sky. The evidence remains incomplete in many cases, especially where tropical climate has damaged organic materials and later cities have covered older layers. But the pattern is unmistakable. The pyramid becomes a way to make the cosmos walkable. On the coast and river valleys of Peru, monumental platforms and pyramid-like mounds appear in another independent tradition, one rooted in adobe, packed earth, stone, ceremonial plazas, and the management of community life in challenging environments. At places connected with early Andean civilization, large platform mounds stand beside sunken circular courts and carefully planned spaces. Later societies continue to build ceremonial and administrative centers that use height, mass, and controlled movement to shape experience. Here the pyramid is not a copy of Egypt or Mesoamerica. It grows from local materials, local rituals, and local needs. In landscapes where water can be precious and climate unstable, building monumental centers may help bind communities together, store authority in visible form, and turn memory into architecture. No single explanation fully accounts for this, because a mound can be a temple, a political center, a gathering place, a symbol of ancestry, and a practical landmark all at once. Then there is Nubia, where the story becomes more entangled. South of Egypt, in the lands of Kush, steep pyramids rise in royal cemeteries, especially at places such as El Kuru, Nuri, and Meroe. These are not simply Egyptian pyramids repeated on a smaller scale. They belong to African kingdoms that interacted with Egypt, sometimes adopted Egyptian symbols, sometimes ruled Egypt, and reshaped those traditions into their own political and religious language. The Nubian pyramids remind us that some pyramid traditions do involve contact, influence, borrowing, and transformation. Independent invention is not the only process in human history, but influence is not the same as passive imitation. A borrowed form can become local, charged with new meanings, placed in new landscapes, and used to express a different identity. The world of pyramids is not divided neatly between total isolation and one lost global source. It is messier and more interesting. This is why the pyramid mystery is best approached slowly. The same shape can emerge from physics, but it does not stop there. It becomes a sacred mountain where the land is flat, a royal stairway where kings seek eternity, a ritual platform where crowds gather, a tomb marker where dynasties claim descent, a cosmic diagram where sky and earth seem to touch. It is simple enough to be discovered many times, and powerful enough to mean different things every time. Its base belongs to the ground. Its summit points away from it. Between those two facts, ancient civilizations found a language of power. So the story begins not with a secret map, but with a recurring human decision. Build wide, rise slowly, make the center visible, put the dead, the gods, the rulers, the calendar, or the memory of the people above ordinary ground. Let the monument outlast the voices that ordered it built. Let future generations argue over what it meant. Across deserts, jungles, plains, and river valleys, that decision returns like an echo, not because all ancient people were the same, but because they face some of the same problems of gravity, authority, belief, and time. The pyramid is a solution made monumental, and once that solution appears, it begins to gather everything around it: labor, fear, devotion, ambition, astronomy, death, and the oldest human wish to leave a mark high enough for the future to see. Long before satellites trace buried streets beneath jungle canopies, and long before ground-penetrating radar listens for hidden spaces inside stone, pyramids already have a strange power over those who stand before them. They do not need to be understood in order to dominate the mind. A traveller approaching Giza in antiquity sees not a puzzle of engineering diagrams, but a horizon altered by human will. A person walking through the ceremonial heart of Teotihuacan sees mountains arranged by hands, plazas stretched into cosmic order, stairways rising with the severity that makes the body feel small. A visitor to the Nubian cemeteries sees steep stone forms clustered against desert hills like a city of the dead still keeping watch. Even when names are forgotten, even when languages fade, even when dynasties collapse into dust, the shape remains direct. It says that someone once gathered a people around an idea large enough to become architecture. For much of history, that impression came before evidence. Ancient and medieval writers often described pyramids through rumour, moral lesson, wonder, or inherited misunderstanding. The Egyptian pyramids were explained as granaries, treasure vaults, monuments of tyrants, houses of wisdom, astrological machines, or the works of ancient sages whose secrets had been lost. Some stories were poetic, some religious, some political, and some simply wrong in ways that still oddly persistent. One of the most famous ancient voices, Herodotus, wrote about the Egyptian pyramids centuries after the Great Old Kingdom monuments were built. He preserved details that later readers found irresistible, including claims about labour, rulers, and construction. But he was also reporting across a vast gap of time, through interpreters, traditions, and local explanations shaped by their own age. The evidence remains incomplete, and historians still debate how much of such testimony reflects older memory, later storytelling, or the visitor's own expectations. This matters because pyramids attract explanations the way high places attract storms. Their size invites exaggeration, their silence invites projection. Their durability makes them seem almost outside ordinary human history, as if they cannot belong to farmers, surveyors, rope makers, scribes, cooks, quarry workers, priests, plasterers, boat crews, and administrators. The temptation is to remove ordinary people from the story because the result feels too grand. But archaeology keeps returning those people to the centre. When excavators uncover worker settlements near Giza, when they find bakeries, cattle bones, administrative ceilings, tool marks, graffiti left by work gangs, harbour installations, and papyrus records connected to stone transport, the pyramid becomes less supernatural and more astonishing. It is not less impressive because humans built it. It is more impressive because humans built it with the tools, materials, beliefs, and institutions of their own world. The same slow correction has happened far beyond Egypt. Early European encounters with Mesoamerican pyramids often filtered them through conquest, religious judgment, and the ruins of cities whose living traditions had been violently disrupted by colonial history. Spanish chroniclers saw temples, idols, and ritual landscapes, but their descriptions were shaped by fear, politics, conversion, and the need to make unfamiliar civilizations legible to Europe. Later antiquarians, explorers, and treasure seekers sometimes looked at Maya and Aztec monuments through the same distorted lens used on Egypt as too large, too precise, too mysterious, and therefore must somehow belong to outsiders, lost tribes, Atlantis, Phoenicians, Egyptians, or another imagined source. These ideas often tell us more about the prejudices of the interpreters than about the builders themselves. Mainstream archaeology has spent generations undoing that damage, showing that Mesoamerican pyramids belong to long local histories of village growth, ceremonial centers, agricultural systems, dynastic politics, writing, mathematics, astronomy, craft specialization, and city planning. A surprising detail is that many pyramids were not originally meant to look like the bare ruins familiar today. The stone steps and eroded surfaces that now seem ancient and severe were often finished, plastered, painted, repaired, and ritually renewed. Mesoamerican pyramids could glow with painted stucco, bright colours, sculpted masks, serpent imagery, and temple buildings that have vanished or survived only in fragments. Egyptian pyramids once held polished casing stones that reflected sunlight with a brilliance hard to imagine from the weathered blocks seen now. Nubian pyramids had chapels, offering spaces, and decorated elements that made each tomb part of a living ritual landscape. Even mud brick monuments, which seem humble compared with cut stone, could be massive, carefully maintained, and visually commanding when their surfaces were fresh. Time has stripped many pyramids down to their bones, and then modern imagination has mistaken the skeleton for the original body. The path from wonder to evidence was not clean or noble at every step. Early excavation often damaged what it hoped to understand. Treasure hunting destroyed contexts. Colonial museums removed objects from landscapes that gave them meaning in Egypt, Mesoamerica, Mesopotamia, Peru, and Sudan. Monuments were measured, mapped, dug into, sometimes repaired, sometimes looted, sometimes romanticized, and often interpreted through the priorities of foreign scholars before local voices gained proper authority in their own heritage. This history cannot be separated from the pyramids themselves, because the modern mystery is partly shaped by how the monuments were uncovered, photographed, published, and displayed. What survives in the record suggests ancient intentions, but the record has also been altered by modern desire. Still, the discipline changed. Archaeology moved from collecting impressive objects toward reconstructing whole worlds. A pyramid was no longer only a majestic mass or a chamber to be opened. It became part of a settlement pattern, a labor system, a ritual economy, a landscape of fields, roads, canals, cemeteries, workshops, and homes. Instead of asking only what was inside the monument, scholars began asking what surrounded it. Where did the workers live? How was food supplied? What route carried stone from quarry to site? Why was the pyramid placed here and not elsewhere? What earlier structures lie beneath it? Was it enlarged in stages? Did later rulers build over older sacred places to claim authority from the past? These questions are less dramatic than hidden treasure, but they are far more revealing. Modern technology has deepened the story without removing the mystery. LiDAR can peel away forest cover and reveal causeways, platforms, terraces, reservoirs, and forgotten city plans beneath vegetation. Remote sensing can identify buried features invisible from the ground. Radiocarbon dating can refine chronologies, though calibration and context still matter. Isotopic analysis can suggest where animals, people, or materials came from. Ancient DNA, though rarely useful for pyramids themselves, can reshape understandings of populations who lived around monumental centers. Muon imaging and other non-invasive methods can detect voids or anomalies inside stone structures without forcing destructive entry. Yet every new method also produces new caution. An anomaly is not automatically a chamber. An alignment is not automatically an astronomical code. A resemblance is not automatically evidence of contact. Scholars still debate many details because evidence has to be interpreted, and interpretation is where imagination must be disciplined. This is the quiet turning point in the pyramid story. The monuments remain mysterious, but the mystery becomes richer when it is tied to evidence rather than freed from it. The old romantic puzzle asks how ancient people could possibly have done this. The better question asks what kind of society makes such work possible, what beliefs make it meaningful, and why the same broad shape can carry such different messages across the world. Once that shift happens, the pyramids stop being isolated wonders and become entrances into vanished systems of life. They lead outward instead of only inward toward rivers, quarries, fields, markets, workshops, scribes, priests, rulers, ceremonies, ancestors, and the long human attempt to make order visible in the world. By the time modern archaeology begins to separate myth from material, one lesson becomes difficult to avoid. The pyramid is never alone. Even when it stands in an empty desert today, it once belonged to roads and workers' villages, temples and storehouses, rituals and offerings, laws and calendars, harvests and floods, even when it rises from jungle, half swallowed by roots. It once belonged to plazas filled with movement, walls carrying colour, stairways maintained by hands, and a city whose pattern can still be sensed beneath the leaves. To study pyramids properly is to stop treating them as impossible objects dropped into history and begin seeing them as the most visible peaks of entire civilizations. The stones are only the summit. Beneath them lies the society that made height meaningful. A pyramid begins to make sense when it is seen not only as a building, but as an artificial mountain. This may sound simple, almost too simple for monuments wrapped in so much mystery, yet it carries enormous force. Mountains are among the most ancient, sacred forms in human imagination. They rise above ordinary ground without asking permission. They gather clouds, catch light before the plains below, feed rivers, hide caves, mark boundaries, and seem to touch regions of the sky that people on flat land can only look toward. Long before cities, temples, kings, and written myths, human beings moved through landscapes where height already had meaning. A hill could be a lookout, a refuge, a burial place, a landmark, a source of stone, a place where weather changed, a place where ancestors were remembered, or a place where the horizon widened. When societies began building monuments, they did not invent the emotional power of height. They learned to manufacture it. In a flat river plain, a raised platform can transform the world. In a dense city, a pyramid can create a summit where none exists naturally. In a desert cemetery, it can turn a grave into a horizon. In a tropical forest, it can lift a temple above the canopy and make the sacred visible from far away. In a coastal valley, it can stand as a fixed point in a landscape shaped by water, wind, and seasonal uncertainty. The form does not need to mean the same thing everywhere to work everywhere. It does what height always does, it separates. It creates a difference between below and above, between common ground and chosen ground, between the path of daily life and the path of ritual ascent. A pyramid makes people look up, and in almost every civilization, looking up has never been a neutral act. This is why stepped monuments feel so natural in ancient religious landscapes. A step is both architecture and metaphor. It allows movement upward, but it also controls that movement. Not everyone climbs. Not everyone reaches the summit. Not everyone stands where the temple, tomb, shrine, altar, or royal chamber is placed. The pyramid turns social order into physical experience. At its base, the crowd gathers. Along its stairway, selected bodies move. At its top, the ruler, priest, image of the god, or memory of the dead occupies a place above ordinary sight lines. That vertical arrangement can be read in many ways: cosmic, political, ceremonial, theatrical. No single explanation fully accounts for it, because ancient monuments rarely belong to just one idea, but the pattern remains striking. Societies that build upward often use height to make invisible hierarchy visible. The artificial mountain also solves the problem of sacred geography. Many ancient communities believe the world has a center, or should have one. The center may be a temple, a palace, a tomb, a plaza, a sacred tree, a mountain, a spring, or a stone. It is the place where the world feels organized, where rituals renew time, where authority is displayed, where the living speak to the dead, or where the gods are believed to receive offerings. But real landscapes do not always provide a perfect center. Rivers shift, forests grow, deserts expand, cities sprawl, so people build one. A pyramid is a center that can be seen. It gathers roads, courtyards, walls, processions, burials, markets, canals, neighborhoods, and memory into a single rising point. It tells the surrounding world where attention should go. In Egypt, this idea becomes almost geological. The pyramid on the desert plateau resembles a mountain of order built beside the fertile floodplain. The Nile rises and falls. Fields appear green after inundation. The sun crosses the sky and disappears beyond the western horizon. Against this moving cycle, the pyramid stands still. It may recall the primeval mound, the first land rising from watery chaos. Though scholars still debate how directly every pyramid expressed that idea and how meanings changed across dynasties. It may also evoke solar rays, a royal stairway, or a perfected tomb form emerging from earlier mastabas and step pyramids. What matters is that Egypt turns mass and height into an argument about permanence. The king dies, but the monument insists that death can be organized, supplied, ritualized, and overcome. In Mesopotamia, the artificial mountain answers a different landscape. The southern plains are broad and low, built from river mud, canal systems, fields, reeds, and brick. Natural stone is scarce in many regions. Mountains exist in the distance, at the edges of the Mesopotamian world, associated with sources of timber, metals, storms, and divine danger. But the cities themselves often rise from flatness. The ziggurat brings the mountain into the city, made of mud brick, repaired and rebuilt over generations. It lifts the temple precinct above the urban plain. Its power is not in hiding a king's body, but in elevating the god's house, creating a sacred axis between city and sky. It is a reminder that similar forms can arise from opposite needs. Egypt monumentalizes royal death in stone beside the desert, while Mesopotamia elevates divine presence in brick above a living city. In Mesoamerica, the sacred mountain becomes even more layered. Many Maya and central Mexican traditions connect mountains with caves, water, ancestors, maize, and the hidden interior of the earth. A pyramid can reproduce a mountain while also controlling access to its summit and, sometimes, symbolically to its interior. At Teotihuacan, the Pyramid of the Sun was built near a cave, and the city's great monuments help structure a vast planned ceremonial landscape. Among Maya cities, pyramids may rise from plazas as dynastic memorials, temple platforms, burial settings, or cosmic statements tied to rulers and calendrical time. The evidence remains incomplete in many places, because later rebuilding often covers earlier phases and tropical conditions erase fragile traces. But what survives in the record suggests a world where architecture, myth, landscape, and political authority are tightly braided together. Peru adds another variation. Along the Pacific coast, monumental platform mounds and pyramid-like centers appear in environments where rivers cut green corridors through desert. Here, height does not always imitate a distant mountain in the same way. It can mark a ceremonial precinct, structure movement, create controlled visibility, and anchor communities across time. Some early Andean centers combine large platforms with sunken circular courts. producing a drama of descent and ascent rather than height alone. People gather below ground level, then look toward raised forms that dominate the surrounding space. This is not simply a pyramid as a stairway to heaven, it is architecture as choreography, a way of teaching the body where to stand, when to look up, and how to feel the weight of collective ritual. The artificial mountain also carries a quieter, more practical truth. It can grow. Many pyramids and platform mounds are not built once and left untouched. They are expanded, resurfaced, encased, rebuilt, repaired, and sometimes deliberately covered by later construction. A ruler may enlarge an earlier sacred platform to inherit its power. A community may renew a temple by building over the old one, preserving the past inside the present. A dynasty may claim continuity by placing a new monument where older memory already lives. This means a pyramid can become a time capsule in layers, not because its builders intended modern archaeologists to peel it open, but because ancient societies often treated sacred architecture as something that accumulated life. The old was not always destroyed. Sometimes it was buried with respect under the new. This helps explain why the pyramid form returns so often. It satisfies gravity, but it also satisfies memory. It provides height without requiring impossible engineering. It creates a center without needing a natural mountain. It organizes crowds without needing written instructions. It turns authority into a viewable shape. It can hold a tomb, support a temple, frame a calendar, honor ancestors, display conquest, or absorb the labor of generations. Most importantly, it allows people to build a landscape that says what they believe the universe is like. The wide base belongs to the human world. The summit reaches towards something beyond it, and the stepped or sloping body between them becomes the path, barrier, and symbol all at once. So when pyramids appear across the ancient world, the repetition is not a shallow coincidence, and it is not proof by itself of a single lost source. It is a sign that many societies discovered the same architectural truth and then filled it with their own gods, rulers, dead, calendars, and fears. A mountain made by nature can be sacred because it already stands above people. A mountain made by hands is even more charged, because it proves that a community can gather itself into height. It is earth reorganized into meaning. It is labor turned into skyline. It is the oldest human gesture of looking upward, made heavy enough to last. At the western edge of the Nile Valley, where cultivation gives way to desert, Egypt's pyramids become more than monuments. They become a boundary made visible. To the east lies the living river, the black soil, the villages, the canals, the fields that return after the flood. To the west lies the dry land of tombs, the place where the sun sinks, where the dead are placed beyond the daily movement of the living, but not outside the order of the cosmos. The Great Pyramids of Egypt stand in this zone of transition, neither fully in the fertile world nor lost in the empty desert. They are close enough to the river to be supplied, close enough to the plateau to command the horizon, and close enough to the western sunset to speak in the language of death and renewal. Their position is not accidental. It belongs to a civilization that sees landscape, kingship, religion, and state power as parts of one vast pattern. The Egyptian pyramid does not appear suddenly in its perfected form. It grows out of older burial traditions, especially the mastaba, the rectangular tomb form used for elites in early Egypt. These earlier tombs already express a concern with permanence, offerings, and the afterlife. They are built to preserve a relationship between the dead and the living, between the buried body and the rituals that sustain identity beyond death. Then, during the Third Dynasty, The step pyramid of Djoser at Saqqara changes the scale of possibility. Designed under the royal authority associated with Djoser and traditionally linked to the figure of Imhotep, it stacks mastaba-like layers upward until the tomb becomes a stairway of stone. It is not yet the smooth-sided pyramid of Giza, but it is already a revolution. It says that the king's burial place can become architecture on the scale of a mountain, and that stone can make royal eternity seem almost physical. From that point, Egyptian pyramid building becomes a process of experimentation. The forms at Meidum, Dahsha, and Giza show ambition testing itself against materials, angles, foundations, and royal ideology. The bent pyramid at Dahsha, with its changing angle, remains one of the most revealing monuments in Egypt because it preserves the visible trace of adjustment. It looks almost like a decision frozen in stone, whether the change reflects structural concerns, construction strategy, or shifting design choices. Scholars still debate the exact cause, but the monument makes one thing clear: the Egyptian pyramid was not born from perfect secret knowledge. It was developed through human problem-solving, trial, adaptation, and the willingness of a centralized state to keep building at enormous scale. By the time the Great Pyramid of Khufu rises at Giza, the form has become astonishingly precise, but that precision has a history behind it. In Egypt, the pyramid is first and foremost tied to the king. It is not a public temple in the same way as many Mesoamerican pyramids, and it is not simply a high platform for daily ritual in the Mesopotamian sense. It is the core of a royal funerary complex. Around it are temples, causeways, smaller pyramids, cemeteries, boat pits, enclosure walls, offering spaces, and processional routes. The pyramid itself may dominate the eye, but it is only the most visible part of a much larger sacred machine. The dead pharaoh is not imagined as an ordinary corpse sealed away and forgotten. He is transformed, sustained, protected, and connected to divine order. The pyramid helps make that transformation permanent. It is tomb, symbol, political statement, and cosmic instrument at once. The shape may have carried several meanings at the same time. Some scholars connect it with the primeval mound, the first land rising from the waters of chaos in Egyptian creation thought. Others emphasize solar symbolism, especially as the sun cult becomes increasingly important in the Old Kingdom. The pyramid's sloping sides may evoke rays of sunlight, a solid path of ascent toward the sky. Earlier pyramid texts speak of the king rising, joining the gods, and becoming associated with imperishable stars. Though the exact relationship between texts, architecture, and changing royal theology remains complex, no single explanation fully accounts for the pyramid's meaning. Ancient Egyptian religion was layered, not mechanical. A form could point to creation, solar rebirth, celestial ascent, royal power, and eternal stability without contradiction. The modern desire to reduce it to one meaning may say more about modern habits than ancient thought. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, built in the 4th dynasty, remains the most famous expression of this system. Its scale has encouraged centuries of speculation, but its true power lies not in fantasy. It lies in the combination of geometry, administration, labour, and belief. Its blocks come from quarries near and far. Its casing stones once gave it a smooth, radiant surface very different from the stepped exposed core seen today. Its chambers and passages are arranged with a precision that continues to invite study, though not every void or feature can be confidently assigned a dramatic purpose. Modern non-invasive research has detected anomalies and hidden spaces in pyramids, and such discoveries are exciting, but caution matters. An air-filled space may be structural, symbolic, logistical, or something not yet understood. In Egyptian archaeology, the unknown is real, but it should not be inflated beyond the evidence. One of the most important modern shifts in understanding has come from looking beyond the monument itself. The pyramids were not built by a vague mass of enslaved misery, as older popular images often suggest. Evidence from worker settlements, tombs of labourers, food remains, administrative marks, and papyrus documents points instead to a complex system of organised labour, skilled crews, seasonal work, state provisioning, and strong central administration. This does not mean the work was easy or gentle. It was hard, demanding, and controlled by hierarchy. But it was also embedded in an Egyptian world where service to the king, taxation, labour obligation, religious duty, and state organisation were intertwined. The pyramid was not only a tomb for one ruler, it was a project that revealed the machinery of a kingdom. A lesser-known but crucial detail is the importance of water. The pyramids today seem stranded in desert, but ancient builders worked in a Nile landscape very different from the modern tourist image. Research suggests that now vanished branches of the Nile once flowed much closer to the pyramid fields, helping explain how heavy materials could be moved near construction sites. Harbours, canals, causeways, and seasonal floodwaters likely played major roles in logistics. Stone did not simply crawl across empty sand by sheer miracle or brute force. It moved through a planned landscape, one in which river transport, labour timing, and geography came together. The desert geometry of Egypt was always connected to water. Recent discoveries in early dynastic cemeteries add another layer to the story, because they remind us that pyramids grew from a much older Egyptian relationship with death, power, and monumental burial. Long before the smooth giants of Giza, elites were already using tomb architecture to express status and continuity. The pyramid is not an isolated invention. It is the peak of a long social transformation from local chiefs to kings, from regional burial customs to national royal ideology, from mud brick tombs to stone mountains built by an increasingly organized state. What survives in the records suggests that Egypt's pyramids are not just engineering achievements. They are political fossils, preserving the moment when kingship learned to speak in stone at almost unimaginable scale. And yet, even at Giza, where the monuments seem so absolute, mystery remains. Not the mystery of impossible builders or vanished super-civilizations, but the quieter and more durable mystery of meaning. What did the polished pyramid look like at sunrise to a farmer working near the floodplain? What did it mean to a crew member who left a mark inside a hidden relieving chamber? What did it mean to priests who maintained offerings generations after the king's death? What did it mean when later Egyptians looked back on these monuments as relics of a remote golden age? The evidence can answer some questions, but it cannot return every human feeling that once gathered around the stones. The pyramid's silence is not emptiness. It is the residue of too many meanings held too long. Egypt's pyramids endure because they join the practical and the cosmic so completely that they are difficult to separate. Their bases answer gravity. Their placement answers the Nile and the Western Desert. Their complexes answer ritual needs. Their scale answers kingship. Their surfaces once answered the sun. Their chambers answered death. Their permanence answered fear. They are not simply buildings shaped like mountains. They are mountains made for a king who was expected to become more than dead, more than remembered, more than human. In Egypt, the pyramid is the architecture of royal transformation, and its shadow stretches across every later question about why civilizations build upward Far to the east of Egypt's limestone plateaus, another kind of pyramid rises from another kind of world. It does not stand beside a desert necropolis, and it does not hide the body of a divine king in a chamber meant for eternity. It grows out of river mud, baked brick, reed, bitumen, canal water, temple economy, and the crowded life of some of the earliest cities on earth. In Mesopotamia, between and around the great rivers of the Tigris and Euphrates, the ziggurat becomes a monument to height in a land where height is precious. The plains are broad, low, and exposed. Floods can change the ground. Cities depend on water control, labor coordination, fields, herds, scribes, and temple institutions. Against this flatness, the ziggurat lifts sacred space upward, not as a royal tomb, but as a man-made mountain for the gods. This difference is essential. Modern eyes often place Egyptian pyramids and Mesopotamian ziggurats in the same family because both are massive, stepped, ancient, and rising. But the resemblance can be misleading if it erases purpose. The Egyptian pyramid is built around royal death and cosmic rebirth. The Mesopotamian ziggurat is centered on divine presence and temple power. It is a platform, a staged ascent, a raised foundation for a shrine that belongs to the god of the city. Its summit is not a tourist viewpoint, not a public meeting hall, not a royal burial chamber. It is set apart. It lifts the sacred above the streets, above houses, above canals, above the noise of trade and administration, so that the god's house occupies the city's vertical center. The structure says that the god is here, and the city exists around that fact. The materials themselves tell the story of place. Egypt has access to great quantities of stone, and its pyramids rely on limestone, granite, and desert geology. Southern Mesopotamia often lacks abundant building stone, so its cities become masterpieces of mud brick architecture. Mud is not a weak material when handled by people who understand it deeply. It can be shaped, dried, baked, stacked, sealed, and renewed, but it behaves differently from stone. It erodes under rain. It slumps without maintenance. It needs facing, drainage, repairs, and ritual rebuilding. A ziggurat, therefore, is never only a finished object. It is an ongoing relationship between a city and its sacred center. Generations must maintain it. Kings restore it. Later rulers rebuild it and inscribe their names into its renewed body. In this way, the ziggurat becomes not just a monument in time, but a monument through time. The earliest roots of Mesopotamian raised temple platforms reached deep into the growth of urban life. Before the classic ziggurats of later periods, communities were already elevating temples on platforms, rebuilding sacred places again and again, each phase rising over earlier ones. This layering is one of the most important facts in the story. Sacred architecture often grows by accumulation. A temple site is not erased when it is rebuilt, it is absorbed. The old platform becomes the foundation of the new one. The city's memory thickens. The ground itself becomes historical. When later ziggurats rise in cities such as Uruk, Nippur, and Babylon, they belong to this long tradition of making the divine center taller, more visible, and more permanent, even when permanence must be renewed brick by brick. At the great ziggurat built under Namu and continued by his successors, offers one of the clearest images of Mesopotamian sacred height. Its broad terraces, monumental stairways, and brick mass dominate the temple precinct. It does not need smooth sides like Giza. Its power lies in staged elevation. The stairways create a controlled approach. The terraces separate levels of access. The shrine above, now lost, would have made the summit a place of divine focus rather than ordinary occupation. What survives in the record suggests that this was architecture meant to organize religious, political, and economic life together. The temple was not a small chapel beside society. It was one of society's engines, managing land, labor, offerings, storage, craft production, and identity. The ziggurat made that engine visible. Because Mesopotamian cities were often city-states, each with its own patron deity, the ziggurat also helped define civic belonging. A person did not merely live near a monument, they lived in a world structured by the god whose temple rose above the city. The ziggurat connected the practical and the sacred in a way that can seem strange only if modern categories are forced onto ancient life. Fields belonged to temples. Workers served institutions tied to gods and kings. Festivals moved through streets and sacred precincts. Offerings moved upward. Authority moved downward. The monument stood at the center of these flows. It was not isolated from daily life. It gave daily life a cosmic frame. There is a lesser-known humility hidden inside the ziggurat's grandeur. Unlike the Egyptian pyramids, whose stone bodies can survive for thousands of years even when stripped and broken, many ziggurats have melted back into the earth. Their mud brick cores soften, collapse, and become great mounds. The Arabic word tell, often used for archaeological mounds in the Near East, captures this transformation. Cities rise, fall, and become hills made of their own remains. In Mesopotamia, archaeology often begins with such mounds, landscapes where human occupation has become geology. A ziggurat can disappear into a shape that looks natural until excavation reveals its brickwork, stairways, drains, inscriptions, and buried phases. The artificial mountain eventually becomes almost a real hill, which is quiet irony worthy of the ancient world. The symbolic language of the ziggurat is still debated. Some scholars emphasize the mountain image, especially because Mesopotamian gods could be associated with distant highlands, storm, sky, and cosmic order. Others stress the ziggurat as a raised temple platform, a way to set the god's dwelling apart and make it visible. Still others focus on political display. Kings who build or restore ziggurats present themselves as proper servants of the gods and legitimate rulers of cities. No single explanation fully accounts for the form, because all of these meanings may have worked together. A ziggurat can be a mountain, a temple base, a political statement, a ritual instrument, and an urban anchor at once. Ancient architecture does not always respect modern neatness. Babylon's Great Ziggurat, later remembered in tradition surrounding the Tower of Babel, shows how these monuments could outgrow their local form and enter the wider imagination. The biblical story is not an archaeological report, and it should not be treated as one, but it preserves something important about how Mesopotamian tower temples could appear to outsiders or later storytellers: immense, ambitious, urban, reaching upward, tied to language, power, and the uneasy boundary between human order and divine authority. Behind the later legend stands a real tradition of building upward in cities where brick, bureaucracy, worship, and royal ambition met. As with so many pyramids, the monument becomes larger in memory than in material alone. What separates the ziggurat from the Egyptian pyramid also helps explain why pyramid-like forms appear across the world without requiring one origin. The same broad geometry can answer different cultural needs. In Egypt, the pyramid seals royal eternity. In Mesopotamia, the ziggurat raises divine presence. One turns the dead king into a cosmic figure beyond ordinary life. The other gives the living city a sacred summit. Both use mass, height, and controlled access. Both require organized labor and state or temple authority. Both dominate the horizon, but they speak different languages. Their similarity is architectural, their meanings are local. This is the deeper pattern beginning to emerge. The pyramid form is not a single message copied from civilization to civilization. It is a powerful structural possibility that ancient societies repeatedly discover, then adapt to their own landscapes and fears. Mesopotamia shows the form in brick instead of stone, in a city instead of a royal desert cemetery, in service of a god's house rather than a pharaoh's resurrection. Its stairways do not lead into a tomb. They lead upward through a social and sacred order built from mud, grain, water, labor, and belief. The ziggurat is a mountain made where there was no mountain, and its summit reminds the city below that the human world, however busy and clever, still lives beneath something higher. Across the ocean from Egypt and Mesopotamia, in cities that grow from volcanic highlands, tropical forests, lake basins, and limestone plains, the pyramid takes on a different life. In Mesoamerica, it is rarely a sealed mountain of royal death in the Egyptian sense, and it is not quite the mud brick house platform of a Mesopotamian god. It is more active, more public, more theatrical. It rises from plazas where people can gather, from avenues that organize movement, from city plans that seem designed to guide the eye and the body towards sacred height. Its stairways are not just structural features, they are paths of controlled ascent. Its summit is not simply the end of the building, it is the point where ceremony becomes visible, where rulers and priests appear above the crowd, where time, power, and the gods are made present under the open sky. Mesoamerica is not one civilization, and this matters. The term covers many societies across thousands of years. Olmec centers in the Gulf lowlands, the vast planned city of Teotihuacan in central Mexico, the many Maya kingdoms of the lowlands and highlands, Zapotec Monte Alban, Toltec traditions, and later the Mexica, or Aztec, world centered on Tenochtitlan. These cultures did not all speak the same language, worship in the same way, or build for the same reasons, yet again and again. Raised platforms, stepped pyramids, temple mounds, and monumental plazas appear as central forms. The similarity is real, but it is not simple. What survives in the record suggests a long regional conversation about sacred mountains, ancestors, calendars, rulership, and the ordering of urban space, rather than one single blueprint repeated without change. At Teotihuacan, the scale is almost unnerving. Long before the Aztec Empire, this city rises in the basin of Mexico with a planned layout that still feels deliberate even in ruin. The broad avenue, later called the Street of the Dead, runs through the ceremonial heart, connecting plazas, compounds, and monumental forms. The Pyramid of the Sun dominates the landscape with a mass that evokes both mountain and state power. The Pyramid of the Moon anchors the northern end of the avenue, visually linked with the mountain behind it, as if architecture and landscape are being made to speak together. The Feathered Serpent Pyramid, with its sculpted imagery and buried offerings, adds another layer of religious and political meaning. Scholars still debate many details of Teotihuacan's government, language, and social organization. But the city makes one thing clear. Pyramids here are part of a complete urban cosmos, not isolated wonders standing apart from daily life. The Pyramid of the Sun is especially revealing because it was built near a cave beneath or close to its central axis. Caves in Mesoamerican thought often carry deep associations with origin, water, fertility, ancestors, and the interior of the earth. A pyramid over or near such a place is not just a pile of stone and fill. It can become a constructed mountain joined to a symbolic underworld. The movement is both upward and inward, towards sky and earth at once. This combination is one of the most powerful differences from the modern postcard view of pyramids. They're not only about height, they're also about hidden depth. The summit may face the heavens, but the base may rest on older sacred ground. Caves, burials, springs, or memories that made the site important before the visible monument ever rose. Among the Maya, the pyramid becomes even more intimate with dynastic memory. In cities such as Tikal, Palenque, Calakmul, Copan, Caracol, and many others, pyramids rise from plazas as temple platforms, royal memorials, burial settings, and political declarations. Some hold tombs, but even when they do, they are not simply Egyptian-style tombs translated into jungle stone. A Maya pyramid can be a mountain for a temple, a setting for ritual performance, a monument to a ruler, an axis of a city, and a stone expression of time. Stairways climb steeply towards small summit shrines. Roof combs lift the building higher still, turning architecture into a visible sign above the forest canopy. Plaster, paint, sculpture, masks, inscriptions, and Stele once gave these spaces a richness that bare ruins only partially preserve. The Maya also show how pyramids could be rebuilt across generations. A temple might be encased by a later one, an older sacred building preserved inside a newer shell. Archaeologists sometimes find earlier phases hidden within pyramids like memories enclosed in stone. This practice was not unique to the Maya, but in the Maya world it becomes a striking expression of continuity. New rulers did not always erase the past. They built over it, claimed it, renewed it, and made it support their own legitimacy. A pyramid could therefore contain a genealogy of power inside its body. Its visible face belonged to the present ruler, but its core might belong to ancestors, earlier dynasties, or sacred events no longer fully recoverable. The evidence remains incomplete because many inner layers are difficult to study without damaging the monument. Yet the pattern of construction over construction reveals a civilization that treated architecture as living memory. Astronomy and calendars add another layer. Though caution is needed, it is easy to imagine every pyramid as a perfect astronomical machine, and popular explanations often go too far. Still, Mesoamerican societies observed celestial cycles with great care, especially the movements of the sun, moon, Venus, and seasonal horizons. Some buildings and city plans appear aligned with solar events, calendrical intervals, or important sightlines. At sites such as Chichen Itza, the play of light and shadow on the pyramid known as El Castillo has become famous for its association with seasonal spectacle, though scholars continue to discuss how ancient intention, later interpretation, and modern presentation fit together. The important point is not that every stone encodes a secret star map. It is that architecture could organize time. A pyramid could make the calendar visible, turning days, shadows, ceremonies, and public space into one experience. In the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan, the Templo Mayor shows the pyramid as imperial center, built in phases and enlarged by successive rulers. It stands at the ritual heart of a city rising from Lake Texcoco, surrounded by causeways, canals, markets, palaces, and neighborhoods. Its twin temples honor major deities associated with rain, fertility, warfare, and the Mexica identity itself. The structure is not a quiet tomb. It is a stage of state ritual, a monument of conquest, a sacred mountain, and a political statement at the center of an empire. Its stairways and summit focus public attention. Its successive enlargements show how power can be layered in stone, each ruler adding to the monument as if adding to history. The rites performed there could be severe, and modern narration must avoid turning them into spectacle. But their role in state religion and imperial ideology cannot be ignored. Recent discoveries in the Maya lowlands continue to change the scale of the story. LIDAR mapping has revealed networks of causeways, platforms, reservoirs, terraces, and buried urban landscapes beneath forest cover, showing that many regions were more densely organized than earlier explorers could see from the ground. Some newly reported cities include pyramids, plazas, canals, and signs of complex planning, reminding us that the jungle did not swallow empty ruins but whole systems of life. This is one of the great reversals in modern archaeology. For a long time, dense forest made ancient Maya cities seem like isolated ceremonial islands. Remote sensing now suggests broader landscapes of settlement, agriculture, water control, and movement. The pyramid remains the visible peak, but the civilization around it was wider, busier, and more engineered than the old romantic image allowed. Mesoamerican pyramids therefore answer the main mystery in their own way. They show that the pyramid form is not only a solution to gravity or a monument to death, it can be a stage for living ceremony, a mountain built over sacred ground, a diagram of time, a statement of dynastic power, a city's anchor, and a place where rulers make themselves visible between crowd and sky. Their steps matter because bodies move on them. Their summits matter because ceremonies happen there. Their plazas matter because people gather below. Their orientations matter because cities use them to organize space and sometimes time. Unlike the sealed Egyptian pyramid, many Mesoamerican pyramids are meant to be approached, climbed, renewed, and seen in action. This does not make them less mysterious. It makes the mystery more human. In Mesoamerica, the pyramid is not a silent triangle left behind by an unknown teacher. It is the living mountain of cities that counted days, watched horizons, remembered ancestors, feared drought, celebrated renewal, fought for power, and placed sacred architecture at the center of public life. Its form may resemble pyramids elsewhere, but its heartbeat is local. It rises from maize fields, obsidian blades, painted walls, limestone quarries, volcanic mountains, dynastic inscriptions, market roads, and the immense patience of communities who believed that order had to be built upward where everyone could see it. Beyond the familiar worlds of Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Mesoamerica, the pyramid becomes harder to name. It does not always appear as the sharp triangular silhouette imagined in popular culture. Sometimes it is a vast earthen mound with sloping sides, softened by grass and centuries of erosion. Sometimes it is a stepped temple mountain rising from a sacred enclosure. Sometimes it is a stupa, a mound of relic and memory transformed into a cosmic diagram. Sometimes it is a royal tomb hidden beneath earth so carefully that the monument seems less like a building than a reshaped hill. In Asia, pyramid-like forms remind us that the word pyramid can be useful, but also dangerous. It gathers monuments together by shape. While their purposes may be entirely different, the eye sees a resemblance. Archaeology asks what that resemblance means, and what it does not mean. In China, Some of the most imposing ancient monuments are not stone pyramids in the Egyptian sense, but great rammed earth tomb mounds belonging to rulers and elites, near Xi'an and across regions tied to early imperial and dynastic power. Large mausoleum mounds rise from plains that once held palaces, roads, ritual spaces, burial pits, and carefully planned landscapes of the dead. The most famous is the tomb complex of the first emperor Qin Shi Huang, whose underground world includes the terracotta army, bronze weapons, officials, entertainers, animals, and a buried vision of imperial order. The main tomb mound is not a pyramid built from cut limestone blocks. It is an earthen monument covering a sealed royal landscape, a mountain of earth placed above an unseen empire. Its power lies partly in what it refuses to show. This hiddenness separates many Chinese royal tomb mounds from the open theatrical pyramids of Mesoamerica. The summit is not usually a stage. The monument does not invite public assent. Instead, it covers, protects, and marks. It creates a visible sign above an invisible world. Ancient Chinese funerary landscapes could be organized with roads, guardian figures, offering structures, pits, walls, and symbolic geography, turning the tomb into a continuation of rank and order beyond death. The emperor or ruler is not simply buried. He is positioned within a cosmos of authority. What survives in the record suggests that the above-ground mound and the underground chambers belong together. The mound is the surface of a deeper political imagination, where the afterlife mirrors the bureaucracy, military strength, and hierarchy of the living state. The construction material itself is significant. Rammed earth can be extraordinarily strong when made with skill. Layers of soil are compressed into dense masses that endure for centuries, even millennia, if protected from severe erosion. In many parts of ancient China, rammed earth architecture allowed builders to create walls, platforms, foundations, palaces, and tomb mounds at enormous scale without relying on the same stone traditions seen in Egypt. A pyramid-like earthen form makes practical sense. A broad base supports a rising mass. Slopes resist collapse, and the mound can be integrated into a larger ritual landscape. The same geometry appears again, not because China needed Egypt's blueprint, but because earth, gravity, power, and death present similar problems to builders everywhere. Yet Chinese tomb mounds also warn against forcing every raised monument into one story. The first emperor's mausoleum is sometimes casually called a pyramid, but that label can conceal more than it reveals. Its meaning grows from Chinese beliefs about rulership, immortality, cosmic order, and the continuation of imperial authority underground. Later, Han imperial tombs and elite burials likewise create landscapes of the dead that differ profoundly from Egyptian royal pyramids. Even when the mound shape seems familiar, scholars still debate many details of unopened chambers, ritual practice, and symbolic layout, partly because excavation of such tombs can be destructive and because preservation concerns are immense. In this case, restraint is also evidence of respect. The mystery remains not because no one cares to know, but because knowing too quickly can destroy what time has preserved. Across the Korean peninsula, royal tomb mounds offer another variation. The great tumuli of ancient kingdoms such as Silla can appear as smooth grassy hills, serene and almost natural, yet they contain complex burial structures, elite goods, and evidence of social hierarchy. These are not pyramids in the strict geometric sense, but they share the ancient impulse to make status visible through raised earth. A mound gathers memory into a shape the landscape cannot ignore. It marks the dead without exposing them. It also turns the burial place into a social statement. The rounded form differs from the stepped pyramid, but the underlying logic overlaps elevation, mass, permanence, and the transformation of a grave into a landmark. In India, the story turns toward the stupa, one of the most important sacred mound forms in world history. Early Buddhist stupas emerge as reliquary monuments, connected with memory, devotion, pilgrimage, and the physical or symbolic presence of the Buddha and other revered figures. A stupa is usually not pyramid-shaped in the Egyptian sense. Many are hemispherical or domed, but its sacred geometry, raised base, processional path, and cosmic symbolism belong to the same wider human practice of building a mound that mediates between earth, memory, and transcendence. At places such as Sanchi, the stupa becomes a carefully organized ritual object, approached through gateways, circled by devotees, and read through reliefs, symbols, and movement. It is not height alone that matters, but how the body moves around the sacred form. As Buddhism spreads across Asia, the stupa changes shape. It becomes taller, more tower-like, more terraced, more layered, and sometimes more visually pyramid-like depending on region and period. Pagodas, stupas, and relic towers adapt to local building traditions from South Asia to Central Asia, China, Korea, Japan, and Southeast Asia. Here again, contact and transformation matter, unlike the independent emergence of pyramids in widely separated early civilizations. Buddhist sacred architecture often travels through religious networks, trade routes, pilgrimage, translation, and patronage. But what travels is not copied mechanically. It is reimagined in wood, brick, stone, bronze, and earth. A sacred mound becomes a tower. A relic monument becomes a cosmic axis. An Indian form becomes Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Burmese, Sri Lankan, Thai, Cambodian, or Javanese in different ways. In Southeast Asia, the Temple Mountain reaches one of its most extraordinary expressions. Khmer architecture, especially in the Angkor world, often uses raised terraces, stepped pyramidal forms, towers, and axial layouts to represent sacred mountains and cosmic order. The temple is not merely a building where worship happens. It is a diagram of the universe made into stone, water, causeways, galleries, towers, and controlled approach. Mountains such as Meru, central in Indian cosmological traditions adopted and transformed across Hindu and Buddhist contexts, become architectural ideas. The temple rises at the center, surrounded by enclosures and sometimes moats that evoke oceans or cosmic boundaries. The form is local, political, religious, and cosmological at once. Borobudur in Java offers another remarkable example. It is often described as a massive Buddhist monument, a terraced mandala in stone, rising through square and circular levels towards stupas and an elevated symbolic summit. It is not a tomb pyramid, not a ziggurat, not an Egyptian royal monument, and not a Maya temple in the forest. It is a path in architecture, a structure meant to be experienced through movement, ascent, circumambulation, carved narratives, and changing views. Its shape organizes spiritual progression, the lower terraces, reliefs, upper circular platforms, and central stupa create a journey through space that is also a journey through doctrine and perception. No single explanation fully accounts for its meaning, because it joins art, pilgrimage, kingship, landscape, Buddhist cosmology, and Javanese sacred geography. What Asia adds to the pyramid mystery is breadth and caution. The same rising forms can hide emperors, protect relics, represent cosmic mountains, organize pilgrimage, express dynastic authority, or embody religious diagrams. Some are built for the dead, some for the enlightened, some for gods, some for royal legitimacy, some for a universe imagined in terraces and centres. Their resemblance to pyramids is sometimes structural, sometimes symbolic, sometimes only visual. But the recurring impulse remains: raise the important thing above ordinary ground. Give memory a body, give power a horizon, give belief a shape people can approach but not fully possess. By this point in the journey, the pyramid is no longer one monument type. It is a family of solutions. Egypt teaches the royal tomb as cosmic engine. Mesopotamia teaches the god's platform in the city. Mesoamerica teaches the living ritual mountain. Asia teaches hidden tombs, relic mounds, cosmic terraces, and sacred towers. The form keeps changing because human worlds keep changing, and yet it keeps returning because height still speaks. A raised mound says the dead matter. A tower says the sacred is near. A stepped temple says the universe has levels. A buried mausoleum says power continues unseen. Beneath all these differences, the old geometry remains patient broad below, narrow above, earth gathered into ascent. Behind every pyramid stands a world of ordinary labour that is easy to overlook because the finished monument appears so still. The stones do not show the aching shoulders that moved them. The mud brick terraces do not show the hands that shaped brick from river clay. The plastered stairways do not show the people who carried water, cooked food, sharpened tools, repaired baskets, measured cords, counted grain, managed herds, recorded deliveries, and kept thousands of workers alive long enough for architecture to rise. Pyramids can look like the dreams of kings and gods, but they are also the record of societies learning how to organize human effort on a scale that no household, village, or small chiefdom could manage alone. They are not merely monuments of belief. They are monuments of coordination. This is one of the quiet truths that makes pyramid building so revealing. A large pyramid requires far more than a ruler giving an order. Authority matters, but an order without food, skill, timing, transport, and administration dies in the air. The work has to be divided. Materials have to arrive in the right place. Workers have to be fed. Tools have to be replaced. Specialists have to solve problems when stone cracks, ramps shift, brick erodes, or foundations settle. Someone has to know the seasons well enough to use them. Someone has to decide when agricultural labour can be redirected toward monumental projects without endangering the fields that feed everyone. The pyramid is therefore a visible sign of an invisible system. Its mass is made from stone or earth, but its true foundation is social organization. In Egypt, this system becomes especially clear. The old image of the pyramids as the product of nameless slaves whipped across the desert has long been challenged by archaeological evidence. The labour was heavy, hierarchical, and probably compulsory in many forms, but it was not the simple cartoon of enslaved masses that once dominated popular imagination. Worker settlements near Giza reveal bakeries, sleeping areas, cattle and fish remains, administrative spaces, and signs of organised provisioning. Crews seem to have had names and identities. Marks left inside hidden spaces refer to work gangs associated with the king. Papyrus records from the Red Sea region describe officials moving limestone by boat for Khufu's pyramid complex. What survives in the record suggests a world of rotating labour, skilled teams, state rations, and enormous logistical planning. The achievement is not made smaller by this. It becomes more human and more impressive. Seasonal rhythm may have been crucial. Egypt's agricultural calendar was shaped by the Nile's inundation. When fields were covered or saturated and labour demands changed, during such periods, the state could mobilize farmers for construction, quarrying, transport, or support work. This does not mean pyramid building was a cheerful public holiday. As some modern simplifications imply, it was still labour under royal authority, but it was tied to the structure of Egyptian life, taxation, service, religion, and the idea that the king's eternal order protected the land itself. A person working on a royal pyramid may have experienced the project through duty, pressure, pride, exhaustion, devotion, or some mixture that no surviving record can fully recover. Scholars still debate the balance of coercion, obligation, compensation, and belief, because ancient labour systems rarely fit modern categories cleanly. Food was one of the great engines of monumentality. To move stone, people need calories. To feed thousands, administrators need herds, fields, granaries, bakeries, breweries, storage jars, distribution systems, and records. In ancient Egypt, bread and beer were not background details. They were the fuel of the state. Cattle, sheep, goats, fish, onions, garlic, grain, and other supplies formed the daily reality behind royal eternity. At Giza, evidence for large-scale food preparation and animal consumption suggests that building a pyramid required a supply chain stretching well beyond the plateau. The pyramid may look like a pure geometric abstraction, but every block depended on meals. Every polished surface depended on people who ground grain, brewed beer, slaughtered animals, loaded boats, and swept workyards. Monumental architecture begins in the stomach before it reaches the skyline. In Mesopotamia, the labour world behind ziggurats was shaped by temple institutions and city economies. Mud brick construction required different rhythms from Egyptian stonework. Clay had to be dug, mixed with straw or other tempering materials, moulded, dried in the sun or fired for special uses, carried, stacked, sealed, and repaired. Because mud brick erodes, maintenance became a recurring duty. Kings could gain legitimacy by restoring temples and rebuilding ziggurats, presenting themselves as faithful servants of the gods. But the actual work depended on brickmakers, carriers, canal labourers, scribes, supervisors, and temple households. A ziggurat rose from the same administrative world that managed fields, offerings, storage, and labour obligations. Its sacred height was inseparable from the accounting tablet. This is an important and sometimes surprising detail. Bureaucracy is one of the hidden parents of the pyramid. Without records, large projects become fragile. Someone has to know how many workers are assigned, how much grain is issued, how many bricks are made, which quarry delivered stone, which crew repaired a terrace, which official failed to supply rope, which boat arrived late, and which temple estate owes labour, writing itself, in several ancient societies, develops alongside needs of administration, economy, taxation, ritual, and state control. The pyramid does not invent bureaucracy, but it reveals its power. Monumental architecture is where belief and paperwork meet, which is not the romantic image most people have in mind. But history often has a dry sense of humour. In Mesoamerica, the labour behind pyramids also reflects city planning, agricultural management, craft production, and political authority. Stone, earth, lime plaster, timber, water, pigment, and food all had to move through organized systems. Lime plaster alone could require burning large amounts of wood to produce, placing pressure on surrounding forests if done intensively. Maya builders quarried limestone, shaped blocks, prepared fill, coated surfaces, and renewed buildings over generations. At Teotihuacan, the scale of apartment compounds, avenues, pyramids, and civic planning suggests a highly organized urban society capable of mobilizing labor across neighborhoods and institutions whose exact political structure remains debated. The monuments are not only religious symbols, they are evidence that cities could coordinate people, materials, and time with astonishing force. And yet it is important not to imagine pyramid builders as faceless. Ordinary lives continued around these monuments. People cooked, repaired clothing, exchanged goods, made tools, told stories, cared for families, honored ancestors, watched seasons, and lived within sight of projects that might outlast them by thousands of years. In some places, workers may have taken pride in their crews. In others, labor may have been a burden imposed by elites. In many cases, both could be true at once. Human societies are rarely simple enough for one emotion. A person can resent a tax and still believe in the god whose temple it supports. A mason can be exhausted by royal demands and still take skillful pride in a perfect joint. A farmer can leave fields for seasonal service and still understand the monument as part of the order that gives life meaning. Peru's platform mounds and ceremonial centers reveal the same connection between monumentality and community organization, though expressed in local forms. Large adobe or stone and earth constructions required coordinated labor in valleys where irrigation, fishing, farming, and exchange networks shaped society. At early Andean sites, the relationship between monumental building and centralized power remains debated. Some centers may reflect religious authority and collective ritual more than militarized kingship. Others later become deeply tied to administration and hierarchy. The evidence remains incomplete, but the scale of construction shows that communities were capable of gathering effort around shared ceremonial landscapes long before many features of later states were fully developed. A pyramid-like platform could be a political tool, but also a social glue. Nubian pyramids add another dimension. Because royal cemeteries required specialized builders, stonecutters, artists, priests, and funerary labor within kingdoms that adapted Egyptian forms to local identities. The steep pyramids of Kush stand as elite monuments, but recent archaeological work reminds us to be careful about assuming too simple a social picture. Burial landscapes can include a wider range of people, practices, and statuses than older models allowed. What looks at first like a royal style may have more complex social meanings when studied closely. This is true across the pyramid world. The monument often begins by seeming to tell the story of rulers alone, but excavation slowly reveals suppliers, workers, priests, households, craftspeople, and communities around it. Power is always present in pyramid building. No large pyramid is innocent of hierarchy. Someone decides, someone commands resources, someone benefits from the monument's message. But power alone does not lift stone. It must pass through hands, tools, roads, animals, boats, meals, songs, measurements, and routines. The human scale never disappears. It is simply hidden by the monumental scale. A pyramid is a ruler's claim, a temple's platform, a city's center, a tomb's cover, a calendar's marker, or a sacred mountain, but it is also a ledger of ordinary work. Its height is made from repeated acts: one basket of earth, one brick, one block, one meal, one measured line, one repaired ramp, one finished day. This may be the most grounding answer to the mystery of why pyramids appear everywhere. They are built where societies have enough surplus, authority, shared belief, and administrative skill to turn many lives toward one rising form. The shape may be simple, but the society behind it is not. To build a pyramid is to prove that a community can concentrate itself. It can take the scattered energy of fields, workshops, rivers, quarries, kitchens, temples, and rulers, then gather it into a monument that stands above daily life while depending entirely upon it. The pyramid points upward, but its story leads downward into the human world that made it possible. The engineering of pyramids becomes most impressive when the machines are removed from the imagination. No cranes swing across the sky, no steel cables hum under tension, no diesel engines drag blocks over prepared roads, no laser levels mark perfect lines across a building site. What remains is more subtle and, in many ways, more remarkable rope. Wood, stone tools, copper tools where available, sledges, baskets, levers, ramps, rollers in some contexts, water, mud, plaster, human muscle, animal power in some regions, careful observation, repeated measurement, and generations of practical knowledge. Ancient builders did not need modern technology to think precisely. They needed methods suited to their materials, their landscapes, and their institutions. The pyramid is not evidence that ancient people had impossible machines. It is evidence that they understood the possibilities of simple tools used at enormous scale. The first engineering problem is location. A pyramid cannot be separated from the ground beneath it. Builders had to choose bedrock, raised terrain, compacted earth, or prepared platforms strong enough to carry mass without dangerous settling. At Giza, the plateau itself provides a limestone foundation, and parts of the natural bedrock were incorporated into the body of the pyramids. This is a lesser-known detail because modern visitors often imagine every block as separately quarried and stacked, but the landscape itself could become part of the monument. Builders did not merely place a pyramid on the earth, they worked with the earth, cutting, leveling, leaving, filling, and shaping it. In other regions, where monuments were built from mud brick or packed fill, foundations had to be prepared differently, with attention to drainage, compaction, and the way water could weaken or preserve the structure over time. Leveling the base was one of the quiet miracles of ancient engineering. A pyramid's geometry depends on the first decisions made at ground level. If the base is wrong, every later course carries the error upward. Egyptian builders used surveying tools such as cords, sighting instruments, plumb bobs, leveling methods, and careful astronomical or solar observations to establish lines and orientations. The exact techniques used for every monument remain debated, but the results show remarkable practical accuracy, especially in the major 4th Dynasty pyramids. Precision did not require modern mathematics in the abstract sense. It required trained specialists, stable reference points, repeated checking, and a society that valued exactness because exactness itself had symbolic power. A badly aligned royal monument would not merely be ugly, it would weaken the claim that the king's house of eternity belonged to cosmic order. Quarrying was another world of skill. Stone had to be identified, cut, separated, shaped, transported, and fitted. Limestone could be quarried near pyramid sites, while harder stone such as granite had to be brought from farther away, sometimes hundreds of kilometers through river transport. Copper tools could work softer stones, while harder stones required pounding with stone balls. Abrasives, patience, and ingenious techniques. The marks left in quarries and on blocks are among the most intimate traces of ancient labour, because they record not the finished monument but the process behind it. The pyramid's clean geometry hides a rougher world of chips, dust, wedges, measuring lines, damaged blocks, tool repair, and decisions made under heat, pressure, and royal deadlines. Transport has always attracted speculation because the movement of heavy blocks feels almost impossible when imagined one stone at a time. Yet ancient transport becomes more understandable when seen as a system. In Egypt, sledges dragged over prepared surfaces could move great weights, especially if the path was lubricated with water to reduce friction. Experiments and ancient imagery support this general principle, though the exact conditions varied by load, surface, and workforce. River transport was essential. Boats carried stone along the Nile or its branches, and recent research on ancient waterways near the pyramid fields helps explain how materials could reach construction areas more efficiently than a dry desert image suggests. The pyramid was not built against geography. It was built through geography. Ramps remain one of the great debated subjects of pyramid construction. Straight ramps, zigzag ramps, spiral ramps, internal ramps, quarry ramps, and combinations of systems have all been proposed for different phases or monuments. No single ramp model fully accounts for every pyramid, every height, and every logistical challenge. This uncertainty is important. It does not mean the Egyptians lacked a workable method. It means that temporary construction features were often dismantled, reused, eroded, or left only in partial traces. Builders may have used different ramp systems at different stages, changing methods as the pyramid rose. A broad straight ramp might be useful early, but become impractically massive at higher levels. Side ramps or wrapping ramps might solve some problems while creating others. The evidence remains incomplete, and the best answer may be less elegant than a single diagram. Ancient construction was adaptive. In Mesopotamia, engineering followed the logic of mud brick. A ziggurat did not need the same quarrying and stone transport systems as Giza, but it faced its own challenges. Mud brick must be made in huge quantities, dried or fired, transported, stacked, and protected. Rainwater and erosion are constant enemies. Builders used layers, facings, buttresses, reed mats, drains, baked brick skins, bitumen mortar in some contexts, and repeated maintenance to keep massive structures alive. The survival of ziggurats as eroded mounds today can make them seem crude, but that is a false impression created by decay. Their original engineering required deep understanding of how brick behaves under load, how water moves through a structure, and how sacred buildings can be renewed across centuries. The ziggurat was engineered not only to stand, but to be repaired. Mesoamerican builders solved different problems with local materials. Maya builders used limestone, rubble fill, plaster, timber, and carefully shaped blocks. Producing lime plaster required burning limestone at high temperatures, which meant fuel, labour, and environmental cost. A bright plastered pyramid was therefore not merely a visual statement. It was an investment of energy on a large scale. At Teotihuacan, builders used volcanic materials, earth fill, stone facings, and planned urban alignments to create monumental structures tied to avenues and plazas. The engineering of such sites was not limited to pyramids themselves. It included drainage, water management, apartment compounds, causeways, retaining walls, and the stability of enormous platforms. A pyramid in a city is only one part of the engineered organism around it. In Peru, adobe and packed earth pyramids present yet another engineering tradition. Adobe bricks can be modular, efficient, and well suited to dry climates, but they require careful handling and can be vulnerable to unusual rain events, earthquakes, and erosion. Coastal Andean builders often worked in landscapes where seismic activity was a real concern, and some ancient construction methods show flexible, compartmentalized, or layered approaches that may have helped structures survive movement better than a rigid mass would. Scholars still debate the extent to which earthquake resistance was intentionally engineered in every case. But what survives in the record suggests repeated practical adaptation to unstable environments. Ancient builders did not need a modern theory of seismic engineering to learn from cracks, collapses, repairs, and the memory of earlier disasters. Astronomical alignment also belongs to engineering, though it is often overstated. To align a monument with cardinal directions, solstices, equinox-related events, lunar standstills, Venus cycles, or important horizon points requires observation over time, not magic. People watched shadows, they marked sunrise positions, they tracked stars, they used sightlines across landscapes. But not every alignment is intentional, and not every intentional alignment means the same thing. Some are symbolic, some practical, some calendrical, some related to city planning, and some may be coincidental or exaggerated by modern interpretation. The disciplined view is more interesting than the sensational one. Ancient builders were careful observers of the sky because agriculture, ritual, kingship, navigation, and sacred time often depended on celestial order. The real genius of pyramid engineering is not one lost device, it is integration. A pyramid requires geometry, but also labor scheduling. It requires materials, but also routes. It requires design, but also repair. It requires symbolic vision, but also people who can notice when a wall bulges or a foundation settles. Ancient builders worked through approximation refined by experience. They used simple tools with sophistication. They accepted mass where modern engineers might use tension. They built wide because wide lasts. They built in layers because layers can be controlled. They built upward gradually because height must be persuaded, not commanded. This is why the absence of modern machines should deepen respect rather than invite fantasy. The monuments do not become mysterious because ancient people could not have built them. They become mysterious because ancient people did build them, under constraints that required intelligence of a different kind from modern engineering. The pyramid is the triumph of patient force, not a sudden miracle, but 1,000 solved problems stacked one above another. A levelled base, a measured line, a dragged block, a dried brick, a repaired face, a watched horizon, a ration issued, a ramp adjusted, a surface polished, a summit completed. The shape rises because every small answer supports the next one, until practical knowledge becomes visible from miles away. The pyramid works because gravity is not its enemy in quite the same way it is for many other buildings. A tall wall fights gravity with narrowness. A tower must resist the urge to lean, crack, buckle, or twist. A roof must span empty space and trust its supports not to fail. But a pyramid begins with surrender. It accepts weight and spreads it downward. It does not try to float over emptiness. It does not depend on fragile columns or long beams. Its strength comes from mass arranged in a way that makes collapse less likely with every lower layer. The higher the monument rises, the less it carries. The lower it descends, the stronger it becomes. This is the hidden calm inside the form. It is architecture that understands heaviness and turns it into stability. This may be the most universal reason pyramids appear so often. A society does not need advanced mathematical theory to discover that wide things stand better than narrow things, or that a sloping mound survives better than a vertical pile. People learn this from stacking earth, storing grain, piling stones, building walls, watching riverbanks slump, seeing hills endure, and repairing structures that fail. The lesson is physical before it is symbolic. If builders want height with limited technology, the pyramid or stepped mound is one of the safest paths. It may require immense labour, but does not require impossible materials. It can be built from stone where stone is available, brick where clay is plentiful, adobe where desert air dries it hard, earth where communities can move soil basket by basket. The form is flexible because its principle is simple: spread the load, reduce the mass as it climbs, and let the whole structure brace itself. A pyramid also survives damage in ways that more delicate buildings do not. If the top is broken, the base remains. If the outer casing is stripped, the core may still stand. If a temple on the summit collapses, the platform below can persist. If mud brick erodes, a mound may remain, still large enough to preserve the outline of the sacred center. This durability is not perfect, and many pyramid-like monuments have vanished almost entirely under ploughing, looting, erosion, or later construction. But compared with palaces of timber, houses of reed, painted walls, woven roofs, and even many stone temples, the pyramid has an unfair advantage. It is mostly itself. Its body is not a shell around space, it is a mass. Time can chew its edges and steal its skin, but the monument often keeps its presence. This is why ruins can mislead the eye. Modern viewers often see pyramids as bare geometric forms because time has removed the things that once softened, coloured, and animated them. A smooth Egyptian pyramid loses its casing and becomes a giant stepped core. A Maya temple loses its painted stucco and wooden elements, leaving limestone stairs and weathered blocks. A Mesopotamian ziggurat loses its shrine and brick facing, becoming an eroded mound. A Peruvian adobe platform loses edges under wind and rare rains, becoming a softened mass against the desert. What remains is the most durable part, not the whole ancient experience. The pyramid survives partly because its least fragile feature is its bulk. It gives posterity the skeleton of a civilization's intention, even when the skin, voice, and movement are gone. The form also works visually. A pyramid is readable from a distance. Its outline is not subtle. It rises from a broad base to a summit, drawing the eye upward with a clarity that does not require literacy, shared language, or detailed ritual knowledge. This matters in ancient societies where architecture often communicates across social levels. A person who cannot read a royal inscription can still understand that a monument dominates the landscape. A farmer approaching from fields, a trader entering a city, a pilgrim crossing a causeway, a local resident standing in a plaza, or a foreign visitor arriving at a royal cemetery all feel the same basic fact: this is the center, this is higher, this is important. The meaning may differ from place to place, but the visual command is immediate. That visibility makes pyramids powerful political tools. Power needs to be seen, and ancient power often needs to be seen repeatedly. A ruler's body is mortal, a speech fades, a battle victory can be forgotten or retold, but a monument remains in the daily horizon. It becomes part of how people orient themselves. Directions may be given by it. Ceremonies may gather before it. Roads may lead toward it. Neighborhoods may grow around it. Burial grounds may cluster near it. markets, temples, palaces, and processions may relate to it. A pyramid does not simply occupy space, it teaches space to revolve around it. In this sense, it is not just an object in the landscape, it is a device for organizing attention. The shape also controls movement. A pyramid can be approached from many directions, but it usually chooses which direction matters. A stairway, causeway, ramp, plaza, gate, or processional road can turn the entire body into a sequence. People do not merely arrive, they are guided. They stand below, move toward the base, climb if permitted, stop where access ends, or watch others ascend. This makes the pyramid especially useful for ritual, because ritual often depends on controlled visibility. The few are seen by the many. The summit becomes a stage, a shrine, a forbidden zone, or a symbolic threshold. The base becomes a gathering place. The slope between them becomes separation made physical. Scholars still debate exactly how different monuments were used in daily and ceremonial practice. But the architectural logic is difficult to miss. The pyramid makes hierarchy walkable. There is another reason the shape works: it can be enlarged without losing itself. A wall can be extended, a temple can be remodeled, a palace can be rebuilt, but a pyramid can be encased. A new layer can swallow an old one. A platform can be expanded outward and upward. A mound can grow over generations while preserving the sacred core inside it. This makes the form ideal for civilizations that value continuity. Each ruler, priesthood, dynasty, or community can add to what came before. The monument becomes a memory container. Its later face may be new, but its interior holds earlier phases. This is visible in Mesoamerica, where temples are often built over older temples, and in many other traditions where sacred sites accumulate structure over time. A pyramid is not always a single event. It can be a long conversation between generations conducted in earth and stone. At the same time, the form can be finished in ways that change its message. A smooth-sided pyramid feels absolute, sealed, solar, and remote. A stepped pyramid feels processional, climbable, staged, and mountainous. A terraced platform feels public, architectural, and urban. A mound feels ancestral, buried, and protective. The same basic mass can be made to express different relationships between people and the sacred. This is one reason the pyramid family is so wide. Builders can adjust slope, height, terraces, stairways, orientation, surface, chamber placement, summit temples, outer walls, and surrounding plazas while still using the same gravitational principle. The shape is stable enough to repeat, but flexible enough to localize. The pyramid also appeals because it turns time into confidence. Ancient societies live with flood, drought, political rivalry, disease, earthquake, erosion, invasion, succession crisis, harvest failure, and the ordinary uncertainty of human life. A pyramid answers instability with a form that seems almost stubborn. It says that something will remain. Of course, this confidence is partly an illusion. Dynasties fall, languages vanish, rituals stop, names are forgotten, monuments are robbed, repurposed, buried, and misunderstood. But the illusion has power, and sometimes the illusion becomes partly true. The pyramid does not preserve everything its builders wanted, but it preserves enough to speak across thousands of years. What survives in the record suggests that durability itself was often part of the message. In the end, the shape works because it solves several problems at once. It is structurally sound, it is visually commanding, It can be built with local materials. It can grow in stages. It can organize crowds. It can support temples, cover tombs, mark centers, frame rituals, and embody cosmic ideas. Its geometry is simple enough to be discovered independently, yet rich enough to carry different meanings in different worlds. A pyramid is not merely a triangle in stone. It is the meeting point of physics and imagination. Gravity pulls everything downward, and the pyramid answers by making downward force the very thing that allows height. That is its deepest elegance. It rises because it is heavy, and it lasts because it knows how to bear its own weight. Once the pyramid has appeared in so many places, the mind naturally begins drawing lines across the map. Egypt to Nubia is easy, because contact, conquest, trade, shared borders, and centuries of cultural entanglement are real. Mesopotamia to neighboring regions is also understandable, because ideas, goods, artisans, religious symbols, and political models move through connected landscapes. Buddhist stupas and temple forms spreading across Asia leave trails of transmission through pilgrimage, empire, translation, and patronage. But then the map widens. Egypt and Mesoamerica, Mesopotamia and Peru, Maya cities and Old Kingdom royal tombs. Distant monuments begin to look like pieces of a pattern too large to ignore. And the old question returns in a seductive form: did someone carry the idea of the pyramid across the world? The short answer is that contact matters in some places, but it does not explain everything, and it is not needed to explain most of the broad resemblance. Human beings are very good at discovering similar solutions under similar constraints. Boats appear in many places because water presents the same problem. Bows appear in many places because stored tension offers the same advantage. Pottery appears in many places because clay, fire, storage, and cooking invite the same experiment. Terracing appears in many highland landscapes because slopes, soil, and farming create the same need. Pyramids belong partly to this family of recurring invention. If a society wants to build high with earth, stone, or brick, without modern frames or engines, a broad base and narrowing upper mass are almost impossible to avoid. The form can be rediscovered because gravity is universal. This does not make the question dull. It makes it more interesting. A single lost source would be dramatic, but it would also flatten the ancient world into a story of copying. Independent invention asks us to imagine many societies reaching similar architectural answers for their own reasons. It gives more credit, not less, to human creativity. The people of Egypt did not need teachers from across an ocean to understand stone, death, solar order, and royal permanence. The people of Teotihuacan did not need Egyptian influence to understand sacred mountains, civic planning, and ritual height. The builders of Peru's platform mounds did not need Maya architects to organize ceremonial space through mass and elevation. Similarity does not automatically mean inheritance. Sometimes it means that different minds, facing different worlds, discover that certain forms work. The diffusionist idea, in its careful version, is not always wrong. Cultural transmission is one of the major forces of history. Forms do move, techniques travel, religious symbols migrate, artists copy and transform, states borrow prestige from older states. Nubian pyramids, for example, cannot be understood without Egypt. Kushite rulers interacted deeply with Egyptian religion, kingship, burial customs, and iconography, and then reshaped those elements into a Nubian royal tradition. Some pyramid-like monuments in Asia also belong to clear lines of religious and cultural spread, especially where Buddhist stupas evolve into regional sacred forms. In these cases, influence is not a fantasy, it is history, but influence has evidence roots, chronology, materials, inscriptions, shared symbols, intermediate forms, neighbouring regions, and cultural contact that can be traced. The unsupported version of diffusionism usually skips these steps. It sees two large stepped monuments on different continents and treats resemblance as proof. From there it imagines a vanished master civilization, Atlantean teachers, ancient global engineers, or travellers who supposedly seeded pyramid building everywhere. These ideas survive because they are emotionally satisfying. They make the world feel encoded with the secret. They also offer an easy explanation for complexity. If ancient people built something grand, perhaps someone else must have taught them. That assumption can become especially unfair when applied to civilizations outside Europe or the modern West, because it quietly denies local peoples the ability to create their own monumental traditions. Mainstream archaeology rejects such claims, not because scholars dislike mystery, but because resemblance alone is not evidence of contact. Real evidence is demanding. To argue that Egypt influenced Mesoamerica, one would need more than pyramids. One would expect traces of contact that are difficult to dismiss datable artifacts crossing oceans in secure contexts. Shared technologies appearing in the right sequence, genetic signals consistent with movement, loan words or writing connections, ship remains, botanical transfers before known contact, matching religious systems beyond vague sky and earth symbolism, or a chain of intermediate sites showing how ideas moved. The evidence remains incomplete for many ancient worlds, but incompleteness is not permission to fill the gap with whatever story feels most exciting. In archaeology, absence of evidence is not always evidence of absence, but it is also not evidence of Atlantis. The ground has rules, even when imagination does not. This is where chronology becomes a powerful guardrail. Egyptian pyramids flourish in the 3rd millennium BCE. Mesoamerican monumental traditions have their own long developmental paths, with major pyramid building rising in different periods and regions through local histories. Peruvian monumental platforms emerge in early Andean contexts, with deep roots in local settlement, ritual, and environmental management. Mesopotamian temple platforms and ziggurats develop through Near Eastern urban traditions. These timelines do not line up like copies spreading from one point outward. They look more like regional experiments shaped by local conditions. Some are earlier, some later, some connected to tombs, some to temples, some to plazas, some to relics, some to royal cemeteries. If a single global blueprint existed, the diversity of purpose becomes difficult to explain. Independent development, mixed with regional transmission where evidence supports it, fits the pattern far better. The deeper reason people reach for a shared origin may be psychological. Pyramids are too visible to feel accidental. Their silhouettes are so clean that they seem intentional in a way almost beyond culture. When the same shape appears repeatedly, the mind treats it like a clue. But human culture is full of such convergences. Many societies build mounds over the dead. Many orient sacred buildings to the sun. Many associate height with gods. Many place important monuments at centres. Many imagine the world as layered, with an upper realm, a human realm, and a lower realm. These patterns do not require a single source because they grow from shared human experience, bodies standing on earth, eyes watching the sky, communities remembering the dead, leaders needing legitimacy, and builders learning from gravity. There is also a practical bias in what survives. Pyramids seem unusually common partly because they endure. Countless other ancient structures have vanished wooden temples, reed shrines, painted houses, temporary ritual spaces, cloth canopies, palaces of perishable materials, and sacred landscapes marked by objects long gone. The surviving record favours mass. It favours stone, brick, earth, and burial mounds. This means our picture of ancient architecture is not neutral. We see what time permits us to see. Pyramids dominate the archaeological imagination partly because they were built to dominate, and partly because their form gives them a better chance of surviving erosion, reuse, and abandonment. The ancient world may have been full of other shapes that mattered just as much to those who made them, but those shapes did not always get the same opportunity to become mysteries. Still, resemblance should not be dismissed entirely. It can point to meaningful convergence. The repetition of pyramids tells us that certain symbolic gestures are widely available to human societies. Raising a mound over the dead makes intuitive sense because burial already changes the ground. Building a temple on a platform makes intuitive sense because sacred things are often separated from ordinary space. Creating an artificial mountain makes intuitive sense because mountains already carry ore. Aligning a monument with the sky makes intuitive sense because the sky is the oldest clock and the largest visible order. These are not trivial coincidences. They reveal deep structures of human thought, not a single lost instruction manual. The most balanced answer, then, is neither total isolation nor universal contact. Ancient worlds were connected in some places and independent in others. Ideas travelled along rivers, deserts, coasts, mountain passes, trade routes, conquests, marriages, pilgrimages, and religious missions. But oceans and distances also mattered. Local histories mattered. Materials mattered. Environments mattered. A pyramid in Egypt, a ziggurat in Ur, a Maya temple at Tikal, a platform mound in Peru, a royal tomb in Nubia, a stupa in India, and a mausoleum mound in China may share the language of height, but they do not speak the same sentence. So the mystery changes shape again. It is no longer the mystery of one forgotten civilization teaching everyone else. It is the mystery of why human civilizations, when they become powerful enough to build beyond immediate survival, so often turn upward. They gather earth, brick, or stone. They make a center. They lift gods, kings, ancestors, relics, or ceremonies above ordinary ground. They turn social order into geometry. That pattern is not weaker because it happens more than once. It is stronger. It suggests that pyramids are not strange exceptions in human history. They are among the clearest signs of what happens when belief, power, labour, and gravity all point in the same direction. If the pyramid is stable because of physics, it becomes unforgettable because of ritual. Stone, brick, and earth can explain how a monument stands, but they cannot explain why people keep returning to it, repairing it, enlarging it, burying offerings near it, aligning roads toward it, placing bodies beneath it, climbing its stairways, painting its walls, or reshaping whole cities around its presence. For that, the pyramid has to be understood as a meeting place between visible and invisible worlds. It is not only a structure that rises, it is a structure that gathers meanings around the act of rising. The dead may rise, the sun may rise, the ruler may rise above ordinary people. The god's house may rise above the city. The ancestral mountain may rise above the plaza. The calendar may rise into view through shadow, horizon, and ceremony, across the ancient world. Pyramids turn height into a sacred language. Death is one of the oldest reasons for building upward. A burial already changes the earth. It places a person below the surface, then marks the place so the living can return. A mound is one of the simplest ways to make death visible without exposing it. It protects and announces at the same time. In many societies, the dead are not imagined as simply gone. They remain connected to land, lineage, household, kingship, fertility, memory, or cosmic balance. A raised tomb says that a death matters beyond the private grief of a family. When the person buried is a ruler, the mound can become a political statement. When the ruler is imagined as divine or semi-divine, the tomb can become a point where human death touches eternity. Egypt develops this idea with extraordinary intensity. The pyramid complex does not simply hide the king's body, it organizes his transformation. The dead pharaoh is supplied with offerings, protected by rituals, connected with gods, and placed within a cosmic geography of sun, stars, desert, river, and rebirth. The pyramid's form may speak of the primeval mound, solar rays, celestial ascent, or royal permanence, and scholars still debate how these meanings shifted from one dynasty to another. But the direction of the symbolism is unmistakable. Death is not treated as an end that architecture can only remember. It is treated as a passage that architecture can help manage. The pyramid is the stone body of that hope, a monument built against decay by a civilization that knew decay intimately. The Egyptian afterlife was not abstract. It needed food, names, images, spells, ritual specialists, tomb goods, and continuing attention. A king's pyramid complex created a permanent economy of remembrance. Priests made offerings, estates supported cults, temples link the royal dead to the living state. Even the orientation of the complex, its causeway, valley temple, mortuary temple, burial chamber, subsidiary pyramids, and surrounding cemeteries formed a system of movement between river, desert, body, and sky. The pyramid was the highest sign, but the rituals around it were the bloodstream. Without ritual, a pyramid would be only a sealed stone mass. With ritual, it became a machine for keeping a royal identity alive beyond death. In Nubia, death and kingship also meet the pyramid, but in a different voice. Kushite rulers adopted and transformed Egyptian funerary forms, creating steep pyramids that marked royal burials in cemeteries such as Nuri and Meroe. These monuments speak of contact, prestige, religion, and local identity all at once. They show how a form associated with Egyptian royal afterlife could be taken into another African kingdom and made part of its own sacred landscape. The chapels and burial arrangements around Nubian pyramids remind us that the visible shape is only the outer sign of a more complex funerary world. What survives in the record suggests both continuity and reinvention. The pyramid can carry borrowed memory, but it does not remain unchanged in its new home. Yet death is not always the center. In Mesopotamia, the ziggurat lifts the divine rather than sealing the dead. Its ritual world belongs to the temple and the city. The god is not buried there. The god is housed above. The raised platform separates the sacred dwelling from the ordinary streets, making the city's relationship with its patron deity visible in brick, offerings, processions, festivals, storage, priestly duties, and royal building inscriptions all help bind the ziggurat to civic life. Its summit is not merely high for the sake of height. It is set apart because the god's presence requires distance. The people live below, but their city is organized around the elevated house of the divine. In this sense, the ziggurat is not a tomb of memory. It is a tower of relationship. Mesoamerica places ritual even more openly on the pyramid's surface. Here the stairway matters because people ascend it. The plaza matters because people gather in front of it. The summit matters because actions performed there are visible, magnified, framed against sky and temple. At Maya cities, pyramids can hold royal tombs, but they also serve as temple platforms and dynastic monuments. At Teotihuacan, the Great Pyramids help define the city's ceremonial geography. At Tenochtitlan, the Temple Mare becomes an imperial ritual center layered by successive rulers. The pyramid is not dead architecture, it is performed architecture. Its power depends on bodies moving through space, on crowds seeing the few elevated above them, on the city feeling itself gathered around a sacred axis. These rituals could be beautiful, solemn, severe, or politically charged. Ancient state religion often joins devotion with authority in ways that modern categories struggle to separate. A ceremony may renew cosmic order, but it may also demonstrate obedience. A festival may honor gods, but it may also remind conquered peoples where power now resides. A ruler may appear as caretaker of sacred time, but that appearance strengthens his claim to command labor and tribute. No single explanation fully accounts for the ritual use of pyramids because ritual itself works on many levels at once. It reassures, frightens, unites, divides, remembers, legitimizes, and transforms. A pyramid gives all of that a stage. Cosmic order is the thread running through many of these traditions. Ancient people did not usually see the universe as empty space filled with isolated objects. They saw patterns: the sun's journey, the moon's phases, Venus rising and disappearing, rainy and dry seasons, floods, harvests, solstices, equinox-like turning points, ancestral cycles, dynastic calendars, mythic ages, and sacred directions. Architecture could make those patterns local. A pyramid could become a diagram of levels: underworld, earth, sky, dead, living, divine, past, present, renewal. It could align with a horizon, mirror a mountain, frame a sunrise, or mark the center of a city. Even when specific alignments remain debated, the broader intention is clear in many places. The built environment is used to place human society inside a larger order. This is why pyramids are often surrounded by plazas, courts, causeways, temples, subsidiary structures, and carefully planned approaches. A sacred monument needs a sacred field around it. The space below the pyramid is not empty. It is where people stand in relation to height. It is where processions begin, offerings are presented, rulers appear, ancestors are remembered, or calendar events become public. The pyramid's meaning spreads outward into the surrounding architecture. The center only works because there is a world arranged around it. The most powerful pyramids, therefore, do not merely represent belief. They produce belief through experience. A person approaches the monument, feels its scale, sees others gathered, watches movement upward, hears ritual words, smells smoke or offerings, sees sunlight strike a surface, or knows that a royal body lies sealed within. The body learns before the mind explains. The monument makes hierarchy, death, renewal, and cosmic order feel physically real. It is one thing to say that the king is closer to the gods. It is another to see his tomb blaze on the western horizon. It is one thing to say that a temple is the center of the city. It is another to watch it rise above every roof. It is one thing to say that time renews. It is another to gather at a monument when light, shadow, season, and ceremony meet. Across civilizations, the pyramid becomes a way of persuading the world to make sense. It answers death with permanence, political uncertainty with hierarchy, environmental unpredictability with cosmic order, and ordinary ground with sacred height. Its meanings differ sharply from place to place, yet they share a central instinct: the most important things should not remain flat. They should rise, be seen, endure, and stand between human life and the powers imagined beyond it. No monument tradition lasts forever, not even one built from stone, brick, and royal certainty. The pyramid gives the impression of permanence, but the societies that raise pyramids are never still. Dynasties weaken, religions shift, capitals move, trade routes change, droughts arrive, rivers wander, foreign armies enter, new rulers prefer new symbols, old rituals lose their urgency or become too expensive to maintain, or are absorbed into forms that speak better to a different age. A pyramid may stand for thousands of years, but the world that made it meaningful can disappear in a few generations. This is one of the quiet contradictions of the pyramid mystery. The monuments survive because they are heavy, but the beliefs, institutions, and voices around them are often fragile. In Egypt, the great age of pyramid building does not end because the Egyptians suddenly forget how to build. This point matters. The decline of massive royal pyramids after the Old Kingdom is not a story of lost technology in the simple popular sense. It is a story of changing power. The pyramids of the Fourth Dynasty represent an extraordinary concentration of royal authority, resources, labor, and ideology. Later kings still build pyramids, especially during the 5th and 6th dynasties. But many are smaller, their cores less durable, their complexes different in emphasis. The pyramid texts begin to appear inside royal pyramids, shifting some of the sacred power from outer mass to written ritual within. Over time, as central authority strains and provincial elites grow more powerful, the ability and perhaps the need to build on the scale of Khufu or Khafra weakens. The pyramid remains sacred, but the state behind the largest form has changed. By the Middle Kingdom, Egyptian kings still build pyramids, but the monuments often use mud brick cores with stone casing, making them less durable once stripped and exposed. Royal burial remains important, but the architectural language is no longer the same as the great limestone mountains of Giza. By the New Kingdom, royal tombs move into hidden valleys, especially the Valley of the Kings, where chambers are cut into the rock rather than raised into the sky. This does not mean Egyptian belief in the afterlife fades. If anything, funerary religion becomes more elaborated in texts, tomb decoration, coffins, and mortuary temples. The royal body is now protected through concealment, ritual, and underground sacred geography rather than through a giant visible pyramid. The problem has changed. The solution changes with it. Robbery, politics, religious development, and royal display all play roles, and scholars still debate the balance between them. But the pattern is clear: Egyptian kingship finds new ways to speak after the Pyramid Age. There is a strange irony here. The pyramid is designed to proclaim eternity, but its visibility may also make it vulnerable. A great royal pyramid marks the location of wealth, burial, and sacred equipment so clearly that later robbers need not wonder where to begin. Hidden tombs are not safe either, as the history of the Valley of the Kings shows, but the shift from visible mountain to concealed chamber suggests a growing tension between display and protection. The monument wants to be seen. The burial wants to remain untouched. Ancient Egypt never fully resolves that tension. It simply moves between answers, each one imperfect. No single explanation fully accounts for the changing forms of a royal burial, but the changes reveal a civilization adapting to its own long experience with death, memory, and loss. In Mesopotamia, ziggurats continue to be built, restored, and revered across long periods, but their fate is tied to the fate of cities. A ziggurat needs maintenance. Mud brick is patient only when people are patient with it. When cities are conquered, abandoned, impoverished, or reorganized, the great platform begins to erode. Rains cut into brick, facing materials are robbed, shrines collapse. Later builders reuse old bricks. A sacred tower becomes a mound, and the mound becomes part of the landscape. In some cases, new rulers restore ancient ziggurats to claim legitimacy from the past. In others, the religious world changes so completely that the old platform no longer has a living role. Mesopotamia's pyramid-like monuments remind us that survival is not only a matter of engineering, it is a matter of care. Without ritual maintenance, even a sacred mountain of brick slowly returns to mud. In Mesoamerica, pyramid traditions change through cycles of growth, abandonment, conquest, and renewal. Teotihuacan's great ceremonial core remains monumental long after the city's political power declines, but the society that built it transforms and eventually disperses or reorganizes in ways still debated. Maya cities rise, compete, flourish, and in many southern lowland regions undergo severe political fragmentation and abandonment during the period often called the classic Maya collapse. The pyramids do not vanish, but their plazas grow quiet, their plaster erodes, their stairways are covered by soil, roots, and forest. The reasons are complex drought, warfare, shifting trade, dynastic rivalry, environmental pressure, social strain, and changing political networks all play roles in different places. The evidence remains incomplete, and it is misleading to imagine one sudden catastrophe emptying the entire Maya world. Maya people did not disappear. Many communities continued, adapted, moved, and still live today. What changed was the world of certain royal courts, inscriptions, and monumental building traditions. This distinction is important because ruins can create illusions. A silent pyramid in the jungle seems to speak of extinction, but often it is not a people who vanished. It is a political order, a city system, a dynasty, a way of building and ruling. The descendants of the builders may live elsewhere, speak related languages, preserve traditions, and carry memory in forms not made of stone. The pyramid survives in place, while culture moves. This reversal is one of archaeology's most humbling lessons. A monument can remain where it was built, but the living thread continues beyond it in ways the monument itself cannot show. The Aztec Templo Maya suffers a different fate, not slow abandonment under forest, but violent transformation under conquest. After the Spanish conquest of Tenochtitlan, the ceremonial heart of the city is dismantled, buried, and built over by colonial Mexico City. The pyramid does not simply erode into ruin, it is deliberately overwritten by a new religious and political order. Stones are reused, sacred space is replaced. The old center is forced beneath the new one, yet even here, disappearance is not total. Excavations centuries later reveal layers of the Templo Maya beneath the modern city, showing that the pyramid survived as an underground memory. This is a different kind of afterlife not visible on the horizon, but waiting below streets, foundations, and cathedral shadows. In Peru, monumental platform centers also change as societies reorganize under environmental stress, political shifts, and new religious or administrative systems. Some early ceremonial centers are abandoned or repurposed. Later Andean states create different kinds of monumental landscapes, From adobe city complexes to highland sacred places and imperial road systems, the pyramid-like platform does not remain the only way to make power visible. In the Andes, authority can also be expressed through terraces, plazas, roads, storage facilities, sacred mountains, carved stone, and administrative compounds. As climates shift and states rise and fall, the built language changes. The desire to organize sacred and political space remains, but the pyramid is only one possible answer. Nubia's pyramids also belong to a changing world. The royal cemeteries of Kush reflect centuries of interaction with Egypt, local African kingship, and shifting centers of power from Napata to Meroe. Eventually, the political and religious systems that sustained these cemeteries decline, and later histories transform the region. The pyramids remain, many damaged by looting and early destructive treasure hunting, their sharp forms standing in desert light after the royal rituals around them have ended. They show that a borrowed and transformed form can outlast both the source of influence and the state that made it local. When pyramid worlds change, they do not all change for the same reason. There is no universal pyramid collapse. Some traditions fade because states decentralize, some because religions transform, some because materials require maintenance that stops, some because conquest overwrites sacred centers, some because rulers choose new symbols, some because environmental pressure makes old urban systems harder to sustain. The pyramid form is stable, but the conditions that produce it are not. Its disappearance from active building traditions often signals a deeper rearrangement of society. And yet the end of pyramid building is rarely an end of memory. People continue to live near ruins, tell stories about them, reuse their stones, fear them, treasure them, ignore them, or build new worlds above them. The pyramid stops functioning as it once did, but it begins another life as ancestor, quarry, landmark, puzzle, sacred remnant, national symbol, tourist destination, or archaeological site. Its first meaning dies slowly. Its later meanings multiply. That may be why pyramids feel so haunted. They are monuments whose original worlds have changed beyond recognition, but whose bodies remain too large to forget. They outlive the rituals that animated them and become questions standing in the open air. After the rituals end, after the dynasties fall, after the painted surfaces fade and the stairways break, pyramids enter a second life. They become ruins, and ruins are never neutral. A ruin is a monument stripped of its original voice but not of its power. It waits in desert light, beneath forest roots, under city streets, inside eroded mounds, or behind names given by people who arrived long after the builders were gone. Sometimes local communities remember it in stories, sacred practices, warnings, or place names. Sometimes outsiders arrive and imagine they're discovering what was never truly forgotten. Sometimes archaeologists come with notebooks and instruments. Sometimes looters come first. Sometimes treasure hunters cut through the very evidence that would have explained the monument best. The pyramid survives, but its meaning begins to pass through many hands, and each hand leaves a mark. In Egypt, the pyramids never vanished from sight. They stood too large for that. Greek travellers saw them. Roman tourists carved marks near them. Medieval writers folded them into legends. Early modern visitors measured them with wonder, and modern archaeologists slowly pulled them back into historical context. Yet even visible monuments can be misunderstood. The Great Pyramid was not hidden, but its world was. Its polished casing had been stripped away, its temples broken, its surrounding settlements buried, its workers' traces covered, its ritual system long ended. For centuries, people focused on chambers, treasure, measurements, and strange theories, while the wider landscape remained less understood. Only when archaeology began to treat Giza as a full living complex, with harbours, bakeries, cemeteries, roads, quarry marks, and worker communities, did the pyramid stop floating alone in imagination and return to the kingdom that built it. Modern Egyptology has changed, especially through non-invasive techniques. Instead of forcing open every mystery with a tunnel or a drill, researchers can now use muon imaging, radar, thermal scanning, 3D mapping, photogrammetry, and careful structural study to search for hidden spaces and construction details without damaging the monument. Detected voids or air-filled anomalies inside pyramids attract public attention quickly, because hidden chambers are irresistible to the imagination. But the careful lesson is restraint. An anomaly may be a passage, a relieving space, a construction feature, an entrance-related structure, or something not yet understood. Scholars still debate the meaning of several discoveries because seeing a space is not the same as knowing its purpose. The old dream of treasure must give way to the slower excitement of evidence. At the same time, new landscape research is changing the question of how pyramids were built. Ancient branches of the Nile, now vanished or buried, may have passed much closer to pyramid fields than the modern river does. This helps explain transport systems that once seemed almost impossible when imagined across dry sand alone. The discovery or reconstruction of old waterways does not reduce the achievement. It makes it more realistic and more sophisticated. The builders were not defying nature. They were using its flood rhythms, harbours, canals, river branches, bedrock, quarry routes, and seasonal labour. Archaeology keeps revealing that the pyramid is not an isolated geometric object, but part of a whole engineered landscape. In the Maya lowlands, the challenge is almost the opposite. Pyramids disappeared not because they were too small to see, but because the forest became another kind of architecture over them. Roots-wrapped stairways, soil gathered in plazas, trees grew from temple tops. Explorers in the 19th and early 20th centuries often described ruins as lost cities swallowed by jungle. And the phrase still has romance, but it can mislead. The forest did not erase the Maya people, and many sites were known locally long before foreign expeditions arrived. What was hidden from outside eyes was the scale of settlement causeways, terraces, reservoirs, neighbourhoods, platforms, defensive works, and ceremonial centres spread beneath vegetation. LIDAR has transformed this picture by stripping away the forest digitally and revealing ground forms invisible from ordinary walking. Suddenly, pyramids are not lonely temples in a green wilderness. They are peaks in a dense ancient landscape. This is one of the most important modern changes in pyramid archaeology. The monument is no longer studied only as a single structure. It is studied as part of networks. A pyramid can be connected to water management, agricultural terraces, roads, plazas, residential compounds, storage areas, defensive lines, and smaller ritual spaces. In Mesoamerica, this matters because it changes the image of ancient cities from ceremonial emptiness to complex urban and rural systems. In Peru, it matters because platform mounds belong to valleys, canals, sunken courts, and communities managing water and memory across generations. In Mesopotamia, ziggurats are not just sacred towers but parts of temple economies, administrative districts, and city layouts. In Nubia, royal pyramids belong to cemeteries, chapels, burial chambers, and regional histories of kingdom and identity. The pyramid is still central, but the center only has meaning because of everything around it. Looting has damaged this understanding in every region. A looter does not usually destroy because of hatred for history, but because objects have value outside their context. A statue, vessel, gold ornament, painted fragment, or inscription can be sold, displayed, hidden, or collected, while the layer it came from is ruined. Archaeology depends on relationships where an object lies, what surrounds it, what layer covers it, what structure it belongs to, what date can be assigned, what pattern it helps reveal. Remove the object violently from its context, and the past loses grammar. This is especially tragic in pyramid landscapes, where tombs and temples often preserve tightly arranged evidence of ritual, status, offerings, construction phases, and later reuse. A stolen artifact may still be beautiful, but the story it could have told is wounded. Conservation brings another difficulty. Pyramids were not built to host millions of modern visitors, absorb pollution, endure vibrations, face climate change, or survive the pressures of tourism economies. Stone can crack, salt can crystallize, mud brick can melt under unusual rain, painted plaster can flake under humidity, vegetation can break masonry, restoration can help, but it can also harm if done carelessly. Every decision becomes a compromise between access and protection, national pride and scientific caution, local livelihoods and long-term preservation. A pyramid is not only ancient, it is still changing. The question is whether modern society can care for it with the patience its builders once invested in making it rise. There is also an ethical shift underway. Archaeology is no longer only about foreign experts extracting knowledge from monumental places. Local scholars, descendant communities, national institutions, indigenous voices, and heritage professionals increasingly shape how pyramids are studied, protected, interpreted, and presented. This matters because monuments do not belong only to the ancient dead or to global curiosity. They stand in living landscapes, among people whose histories, identities, economies, and spiritual relationships may still be tied to them. The rediscovery story must therefore be told carefully. Many ruins were not lost to everyone. They were lost to particular archives, empires, museums, or academic traditions that later claim the authority to name them. The newest technologies may reveal more hidden chambers, buried cities, early tombs, construction anomalies, river channels, murals, altars, or unknown phases beneath later monuments. But the deeper transformation is not technological. It is conceptual. Archaeology is teaching us to see pyramids less as isolated miracles and more as dense intersections of environment, labor, ritual, politics, memory, and afterlife belief. Every scan, trench, map, and conservation project adds a little more of the vanished world back around the stone. The mystery does not disappear. It becomes more precise. So the ruin beneath jungle or sand is not dead. It is still producing knowledge. It asks new questions of every generation that approaches it. Early travelers asked who could have built such things. Later, archaeologists asked how they were built. Modern researchers ask how they functioned inside landscapes, economies, climate systems, and living traditions. The pyramid remains the visible summit of the question. But now the question extends outward and downward into buried streets. Vanished rivers, broken plaster, looted chambers, worker houses, forgotten canals, and the fragile responsibility of keeping what survives from disappearing a second time. The legacy of pyramids begins with the fact that they are still doing what they were built to do. They still command attention. A person who has never studied Old Kingdom theology can stand before Giza and feel the authority of the Western Desert. A traveller who knows little about Teotihuacan can look down the long ceremonial avenue and sense that the city was arranged to guide the eye towards sacred mass. A visitor walking among the steep pyramids of Meroe can feel the presence of a kingdom whose written and spoken worlds are only partly recovered. Someone staring at a lidar image of a Maya city beneath forest can experience a modern version of ancient awe, the sudden realization that the ground is not empty, that the landscape has memory, that whole cities can become invisible without ceasing to exist. The pyramid survives because it is not only a relic. It is a device for making human ambition visible across time. Yet the legacy is not the same everywhere. In Egypt, the pyramids become symbols of the state, of ancient wisdom, of tourism, of national heritage, of global fascination, and of endless speculation. They appear on postcards, documentaries, school books, banknotes, museum walls, film posters, and private dreams of lost knowledge. Their original royal cults are gone, but the monuments have gained a second, third, and fourth life. They no longer serve the pharaoh's afterlife in the way their builders intended, but they still hold Egypt at the center of the world's ancient imagination. This is a strange form of success. The kings wanted eternity, and while their rituals faded, their stone mountains kept forcing the future to remember their names. In Mesoamerica, pyramid legacy carries a different weight, because many descendant communities remain connected to the ancient worlds that outsiders once described as vanished. Maya people did not disappear when many classic cities changed, fragmented, or were abandoned. Nahua histories did not end with the destruction of Tenochtitlan's ceremonial center. The ruins are not only picturesque remains of dead civilizations, they are part of longer cultural histories marked by survival, disruption, adaptation, colonial violence, scholarship, recovery, and living identity. This matters because pyramids can be misused when they are treated only as mysteries for outsiders. Their stones belong to human stories that continue beyond the ruin. What survives in the record suggests ancient grandeur, but living communities remind us that heritage is not only what is buried, it is also what endures in language, memory, ceremony, and place. In Nubia and Sudan, pyramid legacy is especially powerful because it challenges the narrow way ancient Africa has often been imagined. For many people, Egypt has dominated the story so completely that the kingdoms to its south were reduced to footnotes or reflections. The pyramids of Kush tell a different story. They show African rulers adopting, transforming, and localizing monumental forms within their own kingdoms, their own cemeteries, their own political worlds. They also expose how destructive early exploration and treasure hunting could be. As some pyramids were damaged by those who came looking for riches rather than understanding, the remaining monuments stand not only as royal tombs, but as reminders that ancient Africa was not a single story centered on one river valley. It was a web of powers, exchanges, rivalries, adaptations, and identities. Peru's pyramid-like platforms and monumental centers leave another legacy. They expand the meaning of civilization itself. For a long time, popular history focused heavily on stone empires, kings, writing systems, and spectacular tombs. Early Andean centers complicate that picture. They show that large ceremonial landscapes can emerge through community organization, ritual authority, environmental management, and regional exchange informs us do not always match old world models. A platform mound in a desert valley may not look like the Great Pyramid, but it answers the same deep need to anchor people in a shared world. It tells us that civilization is not one path. It is many experiments in living together, remembering together, feeding one another, managing risk, and building places where invisible order becomes physically present. Modern culture often turns pyramids into riddles, and some riddles are honest. How exactly were certain construction phases managed? What did every chamber, void, alignment, or buried offering mean? How did different communities experience the monument in daily life? Which rituals are lost forever? Which older phases remain hidden inside later ones? Scholars still debate many of these questions because the evidence remains incomplete, and it always will be. But there is a difference between real mystery and careless fantasy. Real mystery respects what is known. It moves slowly, accepts uncertainty, and lets the ancient builders remain human. Careless fantasy often takes the monument away from its makers and gives it to aliens, Atlanteans, or imaginary lost masters. That may feel exciting for a moment, but it shrinks the real achievement. The truth is larger ordinary human societies, under extraordinary systems of belief and power, built these things. The pyramid's greatest legacy may be that it reveals a recurring human grammar. When people want to speak of permanence, they build with mass. When they want to speak of sacredness, they create separation. When they want to speak of authority, they build above the crowd. When they want to speak of death, they mark the ground. When they want to speak of cosmic order, they align the human world with sky, horizon, direction, and season. Pyramids gather all of this into one form. Their wide bases acknowledge the earth. Their rising bodies create hierarchy. Their summits point toward realms beyond ordinary reach. They turn human society into geometry. And still, for all their size, pyramids also reveal fragility. The people who built them believed in order, but their kingdoms changed. They believed in memory, but many names were forgotten. They believed in permanence, but surfaces cracked, colors faded, casing stones were removed, temples collapsed, and forests returned. The pyramid endures, but never completely. It is not a perfect victory over time. It is a negotiation with time. It preserves enough to astonish, and loses enough to haunt. That may be why the shape continues to fascinate. It is both clear and unknowable. Anyone can understand its outline. No one can fully recover everything it once meant. It belongs to mathematics, but also to grief. It belongs to kings, but also to workers. It belongs to gods, but also to mud, sweat, rope, stone dust, and bread. It belongs to the past, yet it keeps changing in the present as new scans, excavations, debates, and communities reinterpret it. The pyramid is not one answer to one mystery. It is the place where many human questions meet: how to build high, how to rule, how to remember, how to face death, how to make a world feel ordered beneath the sky. So the reason ancient civilizations built pyramids everywhere is not because they were all following one secret instruction. It is because the shape answered so many needs at once. It was simple, stable, adaptable, visible, sacred, political, and durable. It could be a tomb in Egypt, a temple platform in Mesopotamia, a ritual mountain in Mesoamerica, a ceremonial center in Peru, a royal cemetery in Nubia, a sacred mound or cosmic diagram in Asia. It could be invented, borrowed, transformed. rebuilt, and remembered. Across the world, pyramids became one of humanity's most powerful ways of saying that some things should rise above ordinary ground, and that memory, if made heavy enough, might survive the long weather of time. The last light falls differently on every pyramid. In Egypt it touches pale limestone and desert dust. In Sudan it warms steep stone forms standing quiet among sand and broken chapels. In Mexico and Guatemala it filters through leaves, across stairways once bright with plaster and colour. In Peru it settles over adobe platforms and old ceremonial spaces where valleys hold the memory of water. The monuments no longer sound as they once did. The work songs, prayers, footsteps, tools, festivals, royal commands, market noise, and whispered offerings have gone beyond recovery. Only the shape remains, patient and incomplete. That incompleteness is part of their power. A pyramid does not tell us everything. It gives us mass, direction, shadow, and silence. It leaves room for careful questions. It asks us to imagine the people who planned it, those who carried stone or clay, those who watched from fields and plazas, those who believed a summit could touch the divine, those who placed the dead beneath earth and hoped memory would hold. It reminds us that civilization is not only writing, conquest, or invention. It is also the shared decision to build something larger than one life. Across thousands of years, the pyramid keeps its old posture. It rests on the ground and rises from it. It belongs to gravity, but it points beyond gravity. It is heavy, yet it speaks of ascent. That tension may be why people return to it again and again, in scholarship, in travel, in myth, in quiet wonder. The pyramid is not proof that ancient people knew impossible secrets. It is proof that they knew very human ones, that height changes feeling, that memory needs a place, that power wants a visible body, and that death has always pushed people to build against disappearance. The civilizations that made these monuments are altered, scattered, transformed, or gone, but the old geometry still waits in the landscape. Sand moves around it, roots grip it, rain softens it, cities grow above it, instruments scan it, human eyes keep lifting toward it, and somewhere between the broad base and the narrowing summit, the ancient wish remains to gather the earth into a form that can hold meaning after voices fade, and to leave under the same sky, a shape the future cannot easily forget.